across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Very much appreciate your company. It's almost 3 minutes past 10 o'clock and this is Talk. We are the home, as you know, of common sense. Well, most of the time anyway. Anyway, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have you join us. Lots and lots to talk about today. I'm with you all the way till 1. If you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, of course. We called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, so you had no excuses for not finding it. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up, of course, we may or may not discuss the small matter of Lord Mandelson, technically still a peer of the realm, former business secretary, former, to all intents and purposes, deputy prime minister of this country to Gordon Brown, and former, until only last September, the most senior diplomatic representative of this country abroad as our ambassador to the United States, as appointed by the current, at the time of speaking, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in a wonderful show of his magnificent judgment that he's shown throughout his premiership, I think we can agree, arrested, bailed by the police yesterday, back at home at about 2 a.m, amid the criminal probe into whether or not he did or did not commit misconduct in public office. Mandelson, of course, like Andrew, the former prince, has denied any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. But neither of the men actually have addressed any of these specific complaints against them in relation to handing over of information, passing of secret confidential information to Epstein, which he would, as a financier, been able to use for financial gain. So we're going to discuss all of that. Also, very crucially today, on the 24th of February, it is the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. What a terrible, terrible toll that has taken. We're going to be talking to the former head of American forces in Europe, retired General Ben Hodges, about, well, what more can be done to help Ukraine. I'm of the view, as you know, and you can call the warmonger as much as you want, that we should be helping Ukraine not to just keep Russia at bay, but to defeat Russia, because they are fighting and losing men at a horrific rate on our side. We're also going to be talking about Reform UK, speech from Sir Yusuf yesterday, vowing to ban all face coverings if elected. So not just the burqa, but I don't know about you, I see a remarkable number of young men on public transport who are apparently terribly concerned about germs covering their faces. Hoods up, even when it's 30 degrees. I'd like those coverings removed. Thank you very much indeed. All in favour of that. Plus why the Nottingham triple killer Valdo Callicane was free to carry out his rampage, because mental health workers feared detaining him because it would be racist, because more young black men are detained than anyone else. Genuinely terrifying. We're in Manchester Arena territory of the security guard who didn't approach the Salman al-Baidi man, looking anxious, wearing a very large rucksack at a concert for, basically young girls. Looked a bit suspicious, but you know what? Didn't want to go and approach him because he thought he might be thought of as being Islamophobic. We are in mad territory in this country. It's about time our authorities woken up. Most of the public have woken up. In fact, none of us were ever asleep, but they need to get with the programme. So much to talk about. Delighted to have the company today of Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. Don't get confused. It is Tuesday. She's done a swap. With Tom Slater, who's in tomorrow. I promise. This is going to throw people all day.
Yes. Yeah.
But
and that's the thing. I think it confused me slightly. I keep thinking, we got PMQs today.
No PMQs today. That will be live tomorrow. By the way, also, I'm going to be on air on Friday as well, because of the Gorton and Barton by-election and Gorton and Denton. What am I saying? I'm literally making up the name of a by-election. Gorton and Denton by-election, which we're getting the result obviously early hours Friday morning, and we shall see what happens there, and whether any implications from the result of that by-election, which are certainly worth talking about. I certainly hope so. Anyway, Claire Pearsall, let's talk about Mandelson's arrest. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Love the man, absolutely delightful, charming, Never had any issues with him ever. I mean, no one's ever had any queries over his character at all, have they? Because in no way has he been forced to resign from 2 different jobs over queries of his honesty and his ability to carry out his duties in the correct way. He now faces charges, not been brought yet, but he's been arrested and he's out on bail by the police on misconduct in public office. He's not specifically denied these allegations, but he, like Andrew, arrested on similar charges, has said, that we're innocent of any wrongdoing in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. How serious is this?
Well, it's very serious for, obviously, the incredibly virtuous Peter Mandelson, who has done nothing wrong. It's interesting that the police searched the properties of Peter Mandelson first and then took him off to the station, whereas Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor did it the other way round.
They'd been searching Mandelson's properties for days. One assumes they were given permission to do so, or they had a warrant, but they didn't go into Andrew's properties until much later. No,
exactly. So I think that's quite interesting. The sort of the slight differences between the cases. Timing of the arrest also quite interesting. It's late in the day at 4:30, so quite clearly the police wanted to question him, had reason to do so, felt it necessary to do that. So you do start to wonder what evidence they found that they suddenly decided. Well, that's an
interesting thing. It does seem, if you're going, he left about 1:30 in the morning to go back to his home. It is interesting, yes, because I've seen some reports about Andrew, all this hysteria, being arrested in a dawn raid. It was 8 a.m. What time do you normally get up?
It probably was for him.
But exactly, But a perfectly reasonable time for someone to turn up at your door. But it did seem to me to be rather strange. It wasn't like police had been in the house all day. Now, one of the key issues here is we've got date in Parliament. We've also got the government promising to publish documents in early March, which is next week, of course, about who knew what when, who wrote what when, about Peter Mandelson appointment. Again, not as business secretary. These relate to when he was business secretary under Gordon Brown and is alleged to have passed these documents and information regarding particularly what was going on in the post banking crash to Jeffrey Epstein. But the debate in the Commons today about Andrew, but it's basically using the same cunning wheeze which the Tories used 3 weeks ago to try and get information published about the appointment of Mandelson. And we're told we're going to get that information soon, but a lot of it is not going to be able to be published while there's a police investigation, certainly if any charges are brought. Now, the thing is, people are saying, why have there not been, why have police not turned up beforehand? Why have these people not been arrested? Why have people not been charged, etc., etc.? The reality is the wheels of justice in this country move incredibly slowly. We are looking at documents which are, they're old documents. Yeah. You've got to corroborate those documents. We're going to have people who've got stuff in storage. Have you still got, did you change your email account since the event? Is there any record of these things on the other side? Because there are 2 sides which have the same email, then that verifies it. But if there isn't, and again, we must remember people have a right to be treated as innocent until proven guilty. I think you and I have discussed this before, though, on the basis of what we knew in the public domain that was already known and proven about Peter Mandelson. Yeah. He was still an unsuitable person to be appointed as ambassador for the United States. Now, I was sort of looking up what did I say publicly about his appointment at the point when he was appointed? And I didn't say anything public. You know why? I was in Mexico on holiday, poorly. And I tend to, when I go on holiday, not comment on political things just to have a life.
Yes.
So that's people go, what did you say at the time? Well, not very much, but I certainly passed comment at home about it and made it very clear I've never been a fan of the guy. He's never been a fan of me. I'm quite happy with that. But this is also damaging for the Prime Minister, because at the end of the day, this would be a story about someone who used to be in Labour governments. It would be a Blair and Brown problem. You appointed him, he resigned, Blair. You reappointed him, Blair, and then he had to go again. And you brought him back again and gave him a peerage, Gordon Brown, and this is your fault. But no, Keir Starmer, in his infinite good judgment and wisdom, brought him back last September. Last December 2024, he was sacked last September as the most senior diplomat this country has in the world. That was his choice, and there were lots of people, there's quite a lot of evidence, there were a lot of people advising against that at the time.
And given what is available in the public domain, you can't blame them. It's quite interesting. It's almost as if Keir Starmer had never met the man, never heard his name before, and just thought, here's a really good chap.
He sounds good.
I'll put him in. Yeah. And all right, Peter Mandelson probably does have qualities. He is successful in politics. Doesn't mean I agree with him, doesn't mean I like the way he goes about it. But he's incredibly clever. The one thing he doesn't do is listen to the advice that he would give other people for himself.
I've been ranting on about this for months now. It's just everyone says how clever he is. If you're really clever, you don't get caught.
Yeah.
3 times. You don't get... I mean, how many jobs have you been sacked from for wrongdoing or alleged wrongdoing? I mean, I'm going to go with none.
Yeah.
Am I just not getting caught, or am I not committing wrongdoing? But I mean, think about Peter Mandelson as this brilliant, clever thinker and advisor. This is like, having marriage trouble and going to someone who's been divorced 5 times and saying,
yes, you must know.
how do I save my marriage? These people, it's like saying, how shall I invest my money, to someone who has lost a fortune 5 times as well. I mean, I'm sorry, this guy has not shown himself to be someone we can definitely trust on these things. This comment date today is quite interesting because this is Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, and he's copying what Kemi Badenoch did for the Tories the other day. But this is about Andrew, particularly on his appointment as trade envoy in 2001, 2011, which by all accounts was something that was being pushed for by who? Oh, the then cabinet minister. Guess who? Peter Mandelson. I mean, come on.
You can't make it up.
This is like, I mean, the paths are being crossed. Were they both mates of Epstein then? Yes, I think they were. But it's interesting. This is about getting the documents out, and this allows, because it's specifically about this topic, MPs are therefore allowed to criticise the royals, but they're not, because he's no longer a working royal and he's had his titles taken away, but they're not allowed to criticise King Charles. I mean, that's not the subject of the debate, but I find it extraordinary that there are rules that tell MPs what they can and can't say in our House of Commons.
But that's part of the way the Commons is set up with the monarchy and the way our constitution works, is that it is that rule that you cannot criticise working royals. But you know what? For the majority, fine. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's quite interesting now that the Speaker has given this permission and said...
Humble address.
Yes, this is, back to the humble address, which is... a motion used to speak directly to the monarch, which is what opposition parties tend to do when they're not getting answers.
To appeal to the monarch, basically order your government to release these documents. And again, no one really trusts that documents are going to be released to us in full. They're all going to be redacted. There's always going to be a reason. We know that. But again, if the documents were really clear and really showed that, hey, no one was saying anything they shouldn't say, come on, give me it. There's a reason why Wes Streeting released his exchanges with Mandelson, because he knew that there was a bit damaging, but it wasn't too damaging, and he wanted to get it out of the way. Australia and New Zealand, both of their leaders have backed plans to remove Andrew from the line of succession. He's 8th in line. I'm more worried about his daughters going into line and then their kids. I mean, good grief, how many bad hats would we have in the royal family? I mean, I just couldn't give 2 hoots. I really couldn't. I think it's so irrelevant. I mean, you're talking about the most tragic event at a family wedding happening for all, for William and Harry and all of their children to be wiped out. I mean, you are kind of like, I mean, this is not top of the agenda, and it can't, an act upon it can't be done until after any criminal proceedings are completed. Well, I'm not quite sure why it couldn't be done in that scenario, but there we are. But also, crucially, it would take permission of all of the Commonwealth countries which continue to keep the King as head of state to agree. And at that point, everyone expects yes. Australia might say yes. New Zealand might say yes. But I know the Caribbean countries are going to go, I'm going to get me some reparations out of this. So we'll agree in return for sums of money, and you're just opening up another can of worms there. Yeah, you are. There's 15 realms in the Commonwealth that have the King as head of state, and as you say, Australia and New Zealand are sending out their support for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to be removed, but the others have been absolutely silent. I think you're right to be sceptical as to what most of them, by the way, are incredibly corrupt, kleptocratic governments. Where hello, lots of Caribbean. you are, and they would consider Andrew's alleged behaviour to be completely the norm. Yeah. So it wouldn't bother them at all because it's stuff they're up to. And I'm sorry, that's the reality. I'm sorry. Let's talk about Ukraine. 4th anniversary today of the Russian invasion. That Russian invasion that was a complete surprise to all the experts. They're not going to invade. 120,000 troops and a load of tanks amassed on the border with Ukraine. Bit of a giveaway, I thought. I don't claim to be a military expert, but I'm pretty sure I was very clear that they were going to invade. Said it on air, and they did. We've got, just huge losses on both sides. far more on the Russian side. I mean, they have in the last few months been losing basically 1,000 men a day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about people being, men being executed at the front line for refusing to go on what are effectively suicide missions, because Vladimir Putin cares not a jot about his men. Very clear that Zelensky does care a lot more, because a lot fewer battle losses. But the battle losses are, beyond anything that we've seen since the Second World War.
Yeah.
I mean, these numbers. And I kept saying, I feel sorry for the Russian soldiers too. These are conscripts largely.
Yeah, it's not their choice.
These aren't the sons, by the way, of the St. Petersburg and Moscow elites. But around 325,000 Russian soldiers have been killed until December this year. Another 875,000 wounded or missing. I mean, these are huge numbers. And then Ukraine is believed to have suffered up to 140,000 deaths and about another 360 or 400,000 other casualties in terms of wounded. Zelensky's always said that the death toll was actually much lower than that. But, I mean, I'd be more inclined to believe these independent analyses. But we're looking at huge loss of life, 15,000 civilians as well. Oh, and if you're wondering why Ukraine has far fewer civilian deaths than Gaza had, it's not because the Israelis are uniquely targeting Gazan children. It's because the Ukrainians help their Ukrainian civilians to hide beneath ground. Lots and lots of them, mothers and children, have gone abroad to be safe, and they are kept away from the front line, and they hide in underground tunnels and the like. On the contrary, in Gaza, Hamas ensured that everyone had to stay above ground while they hid below ground safely to ensure that as many were killed as possible. You're welcome, anti-Semites. You're welcome for that information. But what should we be doing? Are we giving enough help? Should we be giving more? Should we just say, go on, do a deal, give away a load of land to Russia and let's get this over and done with? Where should we be?
I don't think we should be saying give away a load of land and have done with it, because we all know full well that wouldn't be the end of it. And why should a sovereign nation have to give up its territory? We wouldn't do it. We wouldn't.
Well, when I have asked people where would you give away, they tend to suggest London, Liverpool, and Norwich. They've been the top three each time. I'm not my view. I live in London. Love the other cities, but that's what they've suggested.
You see, in my neck of the woods, we decided that we wouldn't mind annexing Medway.
Okay.
Sorry, Medway, but
it's all going off. It's all going off.
But all joking aside, why should a sovereign nation have to give up its land? Should we be putting boots on the ground? Well,
they're not asking us to be fair.
They're not asking us to. I don't think we need to insert ourselves into it. But should Zelensky come and say, please help us, then we absolutely do need to look at this.
Shouldn't we give up? I mean, all these Russian billions, isn't like $300 billion worth of Russian money sitting, frozen assets? Sorry. I mean, again, the Belgians going, oh, we'll get targeted by the Russians if we give it up. Oh, get over yourselves. That should absolutely... Well, we'll take responsibility for it. They're already targeting us. And that money should be going to help their front line and to buy weaponry. At the moment, our taxes are paying for weapons to be bought from the United States to be used in Ukraine against Russia, while, by the way, the Germans and others are still buying Russian oil, and gas. Hello, and giving them money. Every single time there's another announcement of another sanction, I'm like, sorry, why is this? Every single sanction should have been put on day one. You could absolutely strangulate Russia. And by the way, all the countries who are buying the oil, the Indians and everything, pick a side. Do you remember when George W. Bush, and after 9/11, you're either for us or you're against us? Everyone in the world had to pick a side. Pick a side. India, you want to be on Russia's side? That's fine. Good luck with that. Yeah, no, but seriously, we should be doing that.
We should, but I just in sort of defence of the Belgians, which are words that will never come out of my mouth again, I'm quite sure. I do think it would also collapse their banking system if you suddenly removed all that Russian money out. So I think that there's a little bit of we have to be sensible with it. But I agree with you that we need to do something, because Putin having sanctions placed against him, he sort of shrugs his shoulders. It doesn't stop him trading.
But again, he doesn't mind if his economy is under the racket. He doesn't care about his people. He doesn't care about anything other than himself and he is. But people don't realise that he's the richest man in the world. Everyone thinks it's someone like, in terms of realisable assets, they think it's, Elon Musk. It's not. He's been siphoning off, Russian oil billions for decades. This guy is,
of course he has,
so rich. You think you'd want to just go and buy your own island. I mean, you could buy Madagascar, for goodness sake. Just go and buy your own island, have a nice life. But no, I'd rather kill people.
Yeah, no power in that.
talking of which, the Nottingham killer, Valdo Calacane, we've got an investigation now, an inquiry into, what actually went on and why this man was free to kill. He'd been sectioned goodness knows how many times because of his violent behaviour. He went on to kill the students, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kuma, both aged 19, of course, we'll remember, and caretaker Ian Coates, aged 65. He attempted to kill 3 other people. It's extraordinary. It could have been even more unlucky on that day back in June 2023. I remember being on air and they were saying something's going on in Nottingham and all the roads are closed. Like, what on earth is going on? But he was not sectioned after a previous violent attack because he was black. You what? You genuinely, you read that and you're like, what? He'd attempted to break into a neighbour's flat during a psychotic episode. The neighbour was so terrified she jumped out of a window and damaged her back, massively bad. Imagine how scared you would be to jump out of a window to avoid somebody. But he was not committed to a psychiatric hospital because professionals considered an overrepresentation of young black males in detention and decided that basically detaining him would be racist. Would it also not be racist, by the way, to basically not give him the care he needed? This care in the community thing, I think we're pretty sure it hasn't worked because there is no care in the community. Yeah. If they don't take their medication, if they're not safe, there's nowhere for them to go.
And I think that just highlights a problem that we already knew, that psychiatric services in this country are not working. They are fit to burst, and care in the community was always one of those ideas when it came up that sounded good in theory, in practice, just plainly doesn't work.
Well, it's closed down all these nasty Victorian, asylums where people were treated horribly and almost like animals. Yeah, OK, absolutely. But you have to provide something for the people who are not safe on the streets. Oh, look, here's another example.
Yeah, and it wasn't as if they didn't have warning signs. It doesn't matter the colour of somebody's skin. It doesn't matter what gender they are. I don't care. If they're in need of help and if they're in need of the public being protected from them, then that's where they should be. It doesn't matter who they are. I don't care.
Again, this is up there with Manchester Arena attack.
Yes, it is. It is.
Oh,
why shouldn't you?
Yeah, don't want to absolutely don't want. Man, it's a Muslim-looking man. Brown-skinned and he's got a rucksack. He looks really dodgy, but no, I don't want to be thought anyone think I'm a racist or a xenophobe, so I won't say anything. Oh, that's all right. There's an 8-year-old girl who's dead, and in other words, 14 other girls and adults. But that's okay. Horrendous. This poor security guard. But again, he thought he'd probably be sacked because he was going to be accused of racism or Islamophobia.
And how bad is that? I would rather cause a little bit of offence to somebody and stop a potential attack happening than anything else. But this poor security guard, probably working on minimum wage, and I don't
blame him at all.
No, I don't. And I think that he's got to carry that for the rest of his life. And that's pretty horrendous. I feel sorry for him.
He's been put in that position by
his bosses.
By politicians and everyone who've pushed that agenda. But I think it's extraordinary. This is what the parents of the 2 students and the family of Ian Coates have had to push for. And it is often I think, oh God, not another inquiry into something. Lessons will be learned, all of that. This is a very, very important lesson to be learned. This sort of obsession with race, and again, these are the racists, the people who think about race like that, as opposed, they're the ones who are the racists, not everyone else. They are costing lives, and it's really that simple. What did you make of the BAFTA N-word apology? I've got to be honest. We heard about it when we were on air yesterday, and I have to say I did have a chuckle about it. And I see that I'm not alone in this. But basically, the BBC's apologised for not editing out a racial slur, the N-word, shouted by a guest with Tourette's syndrome. He was there. This is John Davison. He's there because his life story inspired one of the films. I swear. The audience had been warned about this. Now, these 2 stars of the film Sinners, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, both black actors, they were presenting the very first prize of Sunday's ceremony. They're walking on stage and suddenly someone shouts the N-word at them. Now, you can completely understand why they would be shocked by that and offended by that. But then if you have explained to you, look, this is somebody who doesn't mean anything by it, but it's a difficult one. But the thing is, the BBC put this out on a 2-hour delay as live, so they did have time to edit it out. It went out on iPlayer. But then there's also an element, well, if you're going to be inclusive of people with disability like Tourette's, then why are you editing that out? This is where you get those competing issues, don't you?
They do. To be fair, they could have just muted that bit out. It isn't difficult.
Not that hard, is it?
It's not that hard. I'm sure the technical team of the BBC have got somebody to press a button. But it was. I heard a really interesting set of interviews yesterday with people who suffer with Tourette's or care for people who suffer with Tourette's, and they said it was like a computer program that had been stuck and is just on a loop. And whatever word is in their mind, they cannot help it. But it is often it is the most awful, socially unacceptable word that does come out. So calling women sluts and things like. I mean, just absolutely. But the word gets stuck, and it's like an obsession, and they have to say it. But here's
my thing: look, I wouldn't use the word. I mean, and I genuinely say N-word. We're not actually allowed to say the word, but even if I was allowed to, I wouldn't say the word. I just think it's unnecessary. And we know where it comes from. We know it comes from, from the word Negro and a racial slur against black people at the time when they were used as slaves. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, look, no, that's just not a word that people say. But I think that word should be that rule should go for everyone. I really think that there'll be a lot of black people saying, I'm really offended by hearing that word from this guy shouting it out who meant nothing by it. And certainly you should be offended by someone shouting it out to you as a racial slur. But I really, really, really think that an awful lot of black people need to stop calling each other the N-word.
Well, this is it. The rap music that you hear has that absolutely way all the way through.
And there's a casual way, and the black comedians doing it, and it's like, and that's all totally socially acceptable. We've appropriated the word, but if you're that horrified by and offended by that word, why are you using it? Now, I use lots of naughty words when I'm off air. My favourite word in the world is the C word. I'm not going to lie, I love that word. But if we're going to play the game, well, I've appropriated it. It's a slur against women.
Well, you're having it.
But I genuinely, I just think you can't change the rules all the time.
No, you can't. And don't be so precious about it. When you've got a film that is actually a really important film, showing that, showing the struggle, and having the person there that has made that possible, who suffers with Tourette's, I think you're going to have to expect there are going to be some things that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 10:28 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we are talking about, but in particular your thoughts on Mandelson's arrest. I mean, the latest arrest that we've seen over these relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. He's been accused of passing secret government information to Jeffrey Epstein. He's denied any wrongdoing in relation to that friendship. His best pal. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Your thoughts on the Valdo Calicane inquiry, on the BAFTAs, you name it. Ukraine, should we be giving more help to Ukraine or not? I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food, scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:32 is the time, and a lot of topics to cover today. I want to hear your thoughts on all of them. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Just a couple of moments, we're going to talk to the former government minister and Labour peer, Lord Foulkes. First up, let's go to Patrick, who's in East Yorkshire and wants to have his say on Mandelson. Good morning to you, Patrick.
Oh, good morning, Empress. How are you?
Very well indeed. I like that someone's used my correct title at long last.
Well, we don't need to ask your pronouns, do we, really? To be fair. This thing with Mandelson, I've spent over 20 years, and I tell you, do you remember the days when we used to lock up shoplifters? I've locked up a shoplifter and interviewed him for longer than Mandelson was in for sending secrets off to a paedophile.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. This was a total token arrest. There was nothing in it. I bet there was on 2 to 10 shift. They turned up at 2 o'clock. Go and lock him up, and let's have him out by 10 because I'm off down to the pub. This was to appease.
Did you say at the beginning, are you an ex-copper?
Yeah.
Okay, but this thing, a lot of people are wondering, why did they turn up at sort of 4:30? I mean, to be fair, he is a 72-year-old man. I mean, it's not really reasonable to keep him, overnight. I mean, he's not being wanted for a violent crime. I mean, let's be reasonable about being having civilised behaviour. Why do you think that it was so short then, if that is what you would consider to be a short interview?
It has nothing to do with the offence that he's committing, Julia. You can't pick and choose your time just because he's 71 and say, we'll go around to him in the afternoon. No, if the severity of the crime fits it, he gets locked up at any time.
But wouldn't you arrest someone in the morning, as had happened? And again, both men have denied any wrongdoing. It must be very clear, innocent until proven guilty. But they arrested Andrew at 8 in the morning, which gave them all day, as opposed to early evening.
Nowadays, they'd have had to have a 3-hour briefing on what to say, what not to say, how to say it,
right.
And to discover everything that's going on. And Starmer must know what's going on because, well, allegedly, he's a KC. I wouldn't put him in charge of a KFC. You know what I mean?
What do you make of this comments debate about Andrew as well today, about trying to get information about why, when he was appointed as the trade envoy, which is what these allegations against Andrew relate to, and then of course we're still waiting for the information that was demanded under a Commons debate a few weeks ago from the Tories to get information about the decision and all the different emails and the conversations that went ahead of who knew what when, basically, about Mandelson's appointment to the job of UK ambassador to the US. Do you think we're ever going to get to the bottom of any of it?
Well, not until... I mean, I don't know why all these Epstein files are being trickled into the domain. Why not just get them all out at once, read all the papers at once, then you've got all the evidence at once, then you can go for charging. But somebody, I don't know who's got them all.
Well, the White House. Well, by all accounts, there's a load of stuff sitting in storage units around the country in the US as well.
Well, let's get them out. Let's have a read of it. Then you've got the true evidence there. Then you don't have to go on bailing people and arresting different people at different times. You know, the Americans haven't arrested anybody.
No, indeed. I mean, the realistic thing, of course, is people are saying this could go on for months, but realistically, actually, a huge case like this, it could be years before there is months and months before there is, if there is, a charge, and years before a trial.
And it takes over a year now to get one of our rape trials to justice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of time. And, it'll go on and on and on. And Starmer will be hoping that it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Because he's a coward. He's a coward, Julia. And he runs away from everything. I'm surprised he's still in the country now with PMQs tomorrow.
Very good point. Patrick, thank you very much. He's a KC. I wouldn't trust him to run a KFC. That's my best call of the day already, guys. You've got to live up to that now. Claire chuckling away at that as well. 10:36 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be talking to Labour peer Lord Foulkes about all of this. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's get straight to our next guest to talk about, wherever we are in terms of all these investigations and who knew what when relating to people's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Lord Foulkes is joining us. He's Labour peer and former minister under Tony Blair. Good morning to you, Lord Foulkes.
Good morning, Julia.
I mean, this story is getting messier and messier and messier with the arrest of Lord Mandelson yesterday. Of course, he's denied any wrongdoing in relation to his relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. We must keep stressing that. He hasn't actually been charged with any crime. But a lot of people are saying that this story is going to drag on. We still haven't got the information that people asked for in that humble address tabled by the Tories a few weeks ago, asking for information about his appointment as our ambassador to the US. But isn't this all coming back to Keir Starmer, where the whole thing is, this would be a story about a minister under Blair, a minister under Gordon Brown. And Keir Starmer has made it about his own poor judgment in appointing someone with such a poor track record to be our most senior diplomat only a year or two ago.
I think it's a tribute to British justice that a former prince and a peer have been arrested in the United Kingdom, whereas none of the people, as your caller said earlier, none of the people in the United States who've been mentioned in the Epstein files have been arrested at all. But, Julia, what I'm more concerned about is that no action has yet been taken in relation to the so-called Lolita flights into Stansted Airport, where there were young girls from Latvia, Lithuania and Russia transported in for sex. And Gordon Brown has sent a big dossier to the police. And this is really worrying. Of course, misconduct in public office is worrying, but the way in which these young girls were trafficked is extremely worrying. And I would hope that we will see some quick action in relation to that.
Well, we don't necessarily know the age. A lot of these women are just counted as female. A lot of them were over age. But again, it's interesting. Gordon Brown's got this information now. I don't know where he's been for the last few years. Must have been busy doing something else. But you say no action. These revelations only came out, what, a week ago or so? I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know if you've reported a crime to the police in recent years. If there had been action by now, I would have been absolutely bloody astounded.
Some time ago they came out, and I've put down some questions. I put down some last year, and I put down some a few weeks ago, because the border force and the airport will have information about the flights coming in, and this information must be available, and so they should be looking into taking some action. So I don't think you should play that down, particularly you as a woman, because that is really worrying, whether they were underage or not. The fact that they were being trafficked in.
Why do I? I'm interested because this woman card is being played an awful lot by a lot of presenters about this. Why do I care more about women being victims of sex abuse than man should? Or do men just not care?
No, I accept that. Yeah, I'm not just as concerned as you, but I would hope you would be concerned, and I would hope you would be pressing this.
I am, but the thing is, look, the reality is, and again, I wasn't aware those allegations had been available so early. That had escaped my knowledge. I'm trying to keep on top of all of these issues. But again, the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein are appalling. He's now dead. I suppose what I'm more concerned about mostly now is whether or not people in Britain were involved in those crimes of any sort, whether it was misconduct in public office or the abuse of young women, and whether that was allowed to continue with people in full knowledge of it because they were powerful people and well-connected or members of the royal family. That, I think, is a lot of the concern that I think a lot of my audience have, that there's one rule for them and one rule for us.
Absolutely. The rich and powerful have seemed to be able to do anything they want. And that is worrying, and it's still the case. I think particularly down where you are in London, the rich and powerful still get together and party, including the media, by the way. They turn up in all these parties as well. I mean, most of you in the media are more rich than politicians these days.
But no, people being friends, people getting together. Look, I mean, people will know. There are various people I'm friends with who I'll interview on the show, and I'm quite happy to monster them and take them apart if I think they're talking nonsense. Now, I'm of the view an awful lot of people in the media don't do that and don't hold people to account. And
I agree.
I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot of people in the media. I could tell you exactly how they vote based on who they give a soft soaping right to. But how worried should we be? Because I mean, everyone's sort of putting their tuppence worth in now. And you've got Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader. He's tabling this humble address in the Commons today. And there's going to be debate about what was known at the time that Andrew was appointed, as was Prince Andrew, as our UK trade envoy. Now, this is a man who, when he was a Lib Dem minister in the coalition government, was praising the work of Andrew and saying how outrageous it was that a Labour backbench MP was criticising him. And he says today, his justification today to the BBC was, I didn't really know much about it, didn't read my brief, which is remarkably similar to why he didn't look into the post office scandal. Turns out Ed Davey was a really rubbish government minister. He didn't know anything that was going on at all about anything in his brief. But
hindsight is wonderful, Julia, isn't it? Afterwards, it's easy to see what went wrong and say, oh, no, this shouldn't have happened.
There were plenty of rumours. There was stuff in the papers. There was loads going around about how appallingly behaved Andrew was and how he was not an asset. He was a problem.
I agree, and some people should have shouted louder. It was the same with the Mandelson appointment. I mean, I think Nigel Farage said it was an inspired appointment at the time. He's just the man to deal with that awful man in the White House.
Yeah, he did.
And it was only when the real truth came out that Keir Starmer moved quickly and sacked him at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Except the difference is that Nigel Farage, again, I don't think he was right to say that, but the difference is that Nigel Farage wouldn't have seen the security vetting. I don't believe for a nanosecond that the security vetting didn't say, this guy's got form, there's an issue, he's still mates with this guy, he stays at his home. Not ideal. I mean...
Keir Starmer is much better than you and the media give him credit for.
Is he?
I know him well.
What evidence do you have for that statement?
Yes. No, I know him and know exactly what he's doing. And
he doesn't know what he's doing. So how do you know what he's doing?
He admits when he makes mistakes and
no, he doesn't.
Yes, he did. He look at that. Show that again when he said, "I'm sorry." Look at the number of times.
He had to be dragged kicking and screaming
not
to that
after
Mandelson was sacked.
Not at all. I would hope that
he defended him. He defended him.
I would hope some of you in the media would admit when you make mistakes from time to time.
I admit when I make mistakes.
But he is going to. He's. I think he's leading the country very well. And
but you may be alone in that. I'm not even sure his own cabinet
I'm certainly not alone. There are thousands, millions of people who are coming around to that.
He's got the lowest poll ratings of any prime minister
because
in
he's been
monstered.
He's been monstered. He's been monstered by you and the right-wing media.
Oh, me and the right-wing media. He gets and has had the most remarkably soft ride to the general election and since, from the BBC, Sky and others, who are absolutely card-carrying Labour Party members.
Oh, rubbish! Absolute rubbish. That's nonsense. None of them.
But nothing he's criticised for has been sort of a made-up conspiracy. It's all been of his own doing. He gets monstered by his own backbenchers. He gets monstered.
I criticised him on the winter fuel allowance decision, and it was a mistake. I wrote an article.
I thought you knew what he was doing.
But he changed it. He's had
15 U-turns. You think a man who's had to U-turn 15 times knows what he's doing?
You call them U-turns. What I say is listening to people making representations.
A good prime minister, a good leader, listens before he announces policy, particularly a policy that was none of the things he's U-turned on have been things that were actually in his actual manifesto. He just goes, oh, we're just going to ban jury trials for most people. We're just going to cut the winter fuel allowance. He U-turns because he has taken poor advice from people that he has chosen to appoint to advise him. So it's down to him. And then he doesn't talk to anybody else, doesn't talk to his backbenchers. He then goes ahead and does stuff massively unpopular with the backbenchers, unpopular with the public, and then he has to U-turn. In what way does that say to you he's doing a good job?
Well, you've made up your mind, you see. You're attacking him constantly. You've been doing it week in, week out.
Because he's a rubbish prime minister.
No, he's not. He's doing
Tell me one thing he's done that would suggest he's not a rubbish prime minister.
I think all the things that he's done in relation to Ukraine,
What?
Well, he's
continued the former policy of the last party.
At this very minute, Julia, he is leading. Oh. He's chairing the coalition of the willing.
Oh, so proud of him. And what's happening there? Nothing. Come on.
Of course it is.
Is that the best you've got? What has he done for people in Britain?
You ask Zelensky what's happening there. I'll tell you what he's doing, and that is helping working people, raising the minimum wage, employment rights for people.
Well, have you seen the unemployment rate?
The special educational needs.
Have you seen the parents with special educational need kids aren't happy. Nobody works in that field thinks these reforms are good. And those reforms, by the way, are going to take years. Raising the minimum wage, that's great for people who've got a job until they don't have a job, because businesses are currently laying people off and they're not hiring new people. The unemployment rate has gone up as a result of that, and the national insurance hike. So you think that's a success?
So the chairman of these huge companies making millions of pounds and getting millions of pounds.
Most people don't work for huge companies. Most people work for small businesses employing under 100 people, and they can't afford.
The minimum wage is too much. They think it's too much to pay.
No, they don't think it's too much. Those people don't add 26 grand's worth of value, so they don't hire them.
How much do you get paid, Julia? Could you tell us?
Well, more than the minimum wage.
How much? Come on, tell me.
What I'm paid is entirely my business and my employer's
Why?
business.
Why is it your business?
Why is it? Because I'm not a public employee. No one else is made to pay, not even my audience are made to pay my wages. My wages are between me and my employer.
But it would be interesting to know.
But what's that relevant? I've done minimum wage jobs, but that's
criticizing
no,
people
that's a
getting
nonsense.
minimum wage.
Oh, but that's not. I mean, I know what you're paid as a peer because that's in the public domain, because you're paid by taxpayers. So it's my business as a taxpayer and a voter. But it's not your business what I earn, because you don't have to pay my wages.
Well, we do eventually.
But yes, I earn a lot more than minimum wage. Of course I do. I've done minimum wage jobs, and most people earn more than minimum wage, funnily enough.
Good.
But raising minimum wage hasn't helped a lot of people. If you can keep a job, you'll be better off. But with the cost of living continue to go up, with energy and net zero and all of that, and with employers not taking more people on, they're not going to be able to negotiate pay rises. Overall, I think that people are going to be worse off. But you still think that's a good thing that Keir Starmer's done?
One of the things that you haven't mentioned, and most of the people in the media haven't mentioned, is that the economic situation is now better than it's been for many, many years.
I mean, what statistic?
Since records began, Julia.
Record in 1980. What statistic? Unemployment's up.
No, look, the economic...
Cost of living is still going. I mean, inflation's still above the Bank of England aim. On what basis do you think that my audience are listening to this going, you know what, never had it so good?
The Institute for Fiscal Studies director was on television saying that the economy is better than it's ever been. I think he knows better than you, Julia. He knows better than me.
I mean, can someone look that up? I'd love to see that quote. Lord Fawkes, we'll have to leave it now. We really will. I don't know why I bothered doing an economics degree. I clearly don't understand the economy. But I'm pretty sure neither does Rachel Reeves. Lord Fawkes, we'll have to leave it there simply because we've got to get to get another guest. Labour peer, former Minister under Tony Blair. Do call in. Tell me just how brilliant the economy is, how well you're doing. Maybe if you're running a pub, you're paying your bills, you're on minimum wage, you must be absolutely laughing about how good things are, folks. Up next, we'll talk to Peter Bleksley about that Nottingham killer, and Lord Mandelson released on bail. This is Talk.
Michel Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Well, that was fun with Law, folks. 10:53 is the time. He did say that the head of the Institute of Fiscal Studies has said the economy's never been so good. Whether it's the past one, Paul Johnson, or the current IFS director, we've got no record of that or any words similar to that being said. So I don't know exactly where Law Force has got that from, but there we are. That doesn't come as a surprise to me. Anyway, let's talk about a completely different story now with Peter Blexley, former Metropolitan Police Detective. Good morning to you, Peter.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us. Look, we must talk just first of all about Lord Mandelson. He's been released on bail after being arrested on these charges of misconduct in public office. He's no charges yet brought, but he's released on police bail. There's been a lot of talk about why he was arrested and why, I wouldn't just let go. Does he need to be arrested to have a conversation with the police, and why it would have happened late afternoon, especially for a man in his 70s. Could you talk us through the police decision making on that?
Certainly. I'm going to hazard a guess. Now, every person, when they're arrested and taken to a police station, the custody clock starts ticking. Generally speaking, you've got 24 hours to detain someone, but that doesn't all have to be in one block. We know that Mandelson was detained. So I suspect the detectives investigating him have deliberately left themselves that 16 hours or so in the bank, so to speak, so that should they need to re-arrest him and re-interview him, they can go back and have another bite at the cherry. As for why they arrested him around about 4 o'clock, I suspect that's probably a very smart bit of thinking, because I would imagine Mandelson would undoubtedly have wanted a lawyer present, and that lawyer may well have been in court or in the office until around 4 or 5 o'clock, and therefore available to go and sit next to their client.
Okay,
they're my guesses. I've got no...
No, it's very, very useful to know. Very, very useful to know. Let's talk about something which is absolutely extraordinary. We don't need to have any guessing at all. And this is the awful, awful story of those Nottingham killings, which took the life of 2 students, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Coomer, and also caretaker Ian Coates. The Nottingham killer, Valdo Callicane, we know was a severely, severely mentally disturbed man. But he was not sectioned, we're told, after a previous violent attack. There had been numerous violent attacks when he actually tried to break into a neighbour's apartment. So terrified was she jumped out of a window, for goodness sake, causing herself serious injury. But he was not detained because he was black. That's what the inquiry, which opened yesterday, has found. And it said that basically he was not committed in May 2020 to a psychiatric hospital because professionals considered an over-representation of young black males in detention and decided it was the wrong thing to detain him. This is going to blow most people's minds.
Correct. And can I please add, to Grace, Barnaby and Ian, who he killed, Callicane also very seriously injured. A number of people.
3 others almost died,
who were lucky to survive, and they are now living with lifelong injuries.
Very good point.
Callicane is a monster. And in my opinion, he smoked his way to schizophrenia. It was his fault. So when this ridiculous NHS Mental Health Trust puts policy before protection, it ends up in bloodshed. That's what you get when you get this liberal, fluffy, woke ideology that says you must abide by a policy. No. That's nonsense. Policy should be ignored if it's focusing on race or faith or anything like that. It must be a policy that protects the public. Men, women, children of all cases, of all creeds, colours, religions, faith, whatever. Protection before policy.
It's got to be the number one issue. Well, we had this whole idea of, care in the communities. It happened during my lifetime. The idea was getting people out of these horrible Victorian psychiatric hospitals. But then, they're going to be cared for in the community. But they haven't been. They've been left to their own devices. They don't take their medication. They actually aren't getting cared for as they need. Now, whether or not someone has, I'm with you on the drugs, smoked themselves into this sort of psychosis or not, they need to be protected from themselves, and we need to be protected from them. I just find it utterly bewildering that at any point looking at someone, about whether or not there's a danger to themselves or other people, that you would consider, well, the statistics show we're more likely to detain young black men, so we probably shouldn't detain him because it'll probably be racist. I mean, that is, again, racist in itself. But maybe there's a reason. I mean, we know there's a reason why there'd be more males detained. That's obvious. They commit most crime. Young people, yes, they commit most crime. Young black males, maybe there's a reason in terms of the drugs they take or particular issues in terms of family backgrounds where they're more likely to show that level of violence. I don't know, but I doubt it's got anything to do with the colour of their skin.
Yeah, how about the research that I suspect that if it was thorough and accurate would show that some people from certain black communities have smoked their way through cannabis to psychosis and schizophrenia because it's marginally, if not considerably, more prevalent in their culture. Yeah. It's nonsense. Protection of the public has to come first. But we live in this lunatic society where people are chained to policies, whether it be whatever aspect of DEI ideology it is. And look what it's doing. It's causing bloodshed on the street and the death of beautiful, beautiful people.
Absolutely. Peter Blexley, former Met Police Detective, thank you very much. And Claire Pearce will listen to that. Look, there's no wonder he's angry.
Yeah, no, I can, and I understand that. And he always explains it in a way that is very, very sensible and easy to understand. And
it's because it is hard to understand this one. 3 people are dead and 3 people are injured because of this dumb decision. Exactly.
And I think Peter's quite right that we need to stop looking at these things in isolation and look at drugs and everything else that goes along with it.
But also, I really, really need people making decisions about these things, like the people who, let's let a paedophile out because we don't think they're particularly too much for danger, or let's let someone out, care because we think they're... Well, you live with the consequences. If you are happy to live with those consequences and take the repercussions, then fine. But I don't think you would be if you were personally living with it. Loads more to talk about. Get your calls in. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. We're approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock, and of course, whether you're listening on DAB radio or on your smart speaker, or watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Lots going on today. I'm with you live until 1 o'clock. Delighted to say that Claire Pitts, former Conservative Government Advisor, is here with me still. Unfortunately, didn't get much of a look in the last half hour, but I promise we'll have a good old chat now. If you miss anything from the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and you can hit subscribe. Never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, more about the arrest and criminal probe into Peter Mandelson, the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We will, in the next hour, be talking to retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. He's a former commander of the US Army in Europe. He knows what he's talking about what help we should be giving to Ukraine. Also going to be talking about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor charging taxpayers for his own private massages while working as a trade envoy. Is anyone even remotely surprised by that? You know, I mean, really? And of course, why over half of councils failed to comply with the Supreme Court's landmark biological sex ruling. And by the way, councils are the people who are providing not just facilities for their staff, but also, you know, leisure centres, schools, you name it. Why do they think they don't have to obey the law? Maybe because the government has basically allowed them to not do so. Well, we'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides. And as I say, Claire is still with me to chat about things. And I want to hear from you as well. As you know, I say this every day because it is true. You get to decide what you call in about. If you don't want to call in about one of the subjects we're asking you about, you call in about what you want to call about, because there are lots of things to discuss. But we've been particularly talking about Lord Mandelson having been arrested, released on bail late last night, the early hours this morning, really, for allegedly passing secret government information to Jeffrey Epstein. Your reaction to that? In particular, actually, how it, relates to one Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, who chose to bring him back out from the cold. Busy earning his millions, wasn't he? By that lovely house in Regent's Park in London. That's about as des-res a house as you can have in London, let me tell you. All that money, from his utter brilliance, that's how he's earned that money. What do you think of all of that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Claire, let's talk first of all about these possible charges. We've just got an arrest and a police bail for Mandelson, former UK ambassador to the US. But the common law offence of misconduct in public office is what he has been arrested under, as long as has Andrew as well. And it's been described as one of the most notoriously difficult laws to define. The CPS says the offence is committed when a public officer, and this is their words, acting as such willfully neglects to perform their duty and or willfully misconducts themselves to such a degree as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust in the office holder without reasonable excuse or justification. Now, you would think on the face of it that to take just a random allegation one could face, if one was, for instance, getting hold of documents in the course of one's job, say as a government minister or as a government representative abroad, which was confidential information that you were given because of your role, but that information would be of use to someone you knew who, I don't know, happened to be a financier in America, would make money out of it. If you, within 5 minutes of getting that information, pass that information on to that person, I think a lot of us would think that would possibly amount to something like misconduct in public office. But is there a requirement, as many are suggesting, that you need to do that knowing that the person would benefit? And would you have to be personally benefiting from it? And
then this is a real difficulty, because I did look at this. There are 4 parts to trying to prosecute somebody for misconduct in public office, and it's quite complicated. Knowingly is the key word in all of that. Have you knowingly passed on information that will be of a benefit to someone else? Do you
accidentally forward emails to people all the time? I mean, I'm easy mistake.
I manage not to. So if I ever forward one of my boring emails to you,
were you yes, I suppose, were you knowingly passing on information that you knew would be a breach of the law if you did so?
And are you willfully neglecting your role in public office? So that's
where you have
another
a position of trust.
A position of trust. And is this detrimental? If you are a public servant, is this detrimental to the public's trust in
Right.
your office. So, and there is sort of bits of clauses in between. So it is very, very
But
complicated.
a lot of people
prove.
think that looks really, really obvious and simple. However, very, very difficult to prove because of the intent and all of this.
Absolutely.
And so even if you can go, well, those emails are there in black and white, and even if, and I don't think this has been said, people have denied any wrongdoing. If both of the men who are alleged to who've been arrested on these issues, separate crimes, alleged they've denied any wrongdoing. But if they did say, look, yes, those emails were sent, but they were not an issue of misconduct.
And that's it.
Then that could be the It is very likely, look, this is going to drag on, that we don't see, if we don't see, we may not see at all any charges. And even if there were charges, again, the slow pace of the law these days, especially for an historically alleged crime, as opposed to someone who had to be held for someone who's been alleged to have committed violence or rape or murder, who was on remand at the moment, and therefore those cases tend to be brought forward a bit sooner. We could be looking at, realistically, years before a case came to court, if a charge was brought.
That's right. And we're also dealing with a period of time where emails and devices are not the same as they are now. I mean, everybody has everything on a device.
And on the cloud.
And on the cloud, whereas back then, BlackBerry's Palm Pilots, do we all remember those? People may not.
BlackBerry.
So did
Loved my BlackBerry.
I mourn the BlackBerry. But people don't have those devices. They don't have things in storage.
Change
they
their
won't
email
change their
address.
email addresses. So there's an awful lot that we have to consider with the time, especially if you're looking back into the early 2000s. So we won't see anything happen particularly quickly. But
when people are saying, why is it taking so long?
Well,
this is actually looking. This is not as glacial.
Quicker.
This is as quick as it gets. So you try having your handbag stolen and see how quick the police respond. I know I bang on about it, but it really does annoy me. But we've got that debate today about try to get documents in the same way that the Tories try to get the documents. We still haven't seen them yet, about the decision to appoint Mandelson as the UK ambassador to the United States. And that was only in December 2024. The Lib Dems are trying to get documents about Prince Andrew being appointed as a trade envoy back in 2001. Again, we will come back to who knew what when. There's this kind of view there's going to be some smoking gun here, but the reality is the issue we've got here is we've got particularly with Mandelson, who's very much back in the news. And again, people were saying when Andrew was arrested, oh, well, this is just to try and take away attention from the government and Mandelson. It's like, no, it's just different police forces doing different things. But the key thing here is that this is a man who would have been a long-term... he was a minister years ago. He was brought back 3 times, but it's Brown and Blair's decision. It's their poor judgment rather than anyone else's. Nope, now it's Keir Starmer's poor judgment.
It is, and it's incredibly poor judgment, I think. And I did say it at the time he was given the job, and I just said the risks that come with this are enormous for the proposed
but he's
benefits to the nation.
Mandelson supposedly brilliant, and so it was worth it. And as was pointed out by Labour peer Lord Fawkes a bit earlier, people like Nigel Farage said this was an inspired appointment. I think inspired would have been keeping Karen Pierce on the US ambassador as well.
She was incredibly good. She was very talented at her job, and she needn't have moved over. And I think it was a mistake to do that. And now, where are we? Who are we going to get?
Is there anybody that the Prime Minister appoints that we think is a good decision? Because you've got question marks about quite a lot of his own ministers. He lost an anti-corruption minister to a corruption probe, and by the way, and conviction in Bangladesh. My MP, he's lost. I mean, he keeps losing. He's lost like 3 different ministers, hasn't he?
Yes, the homelessness minister for putting up rents in
in some landlords, basically. I mean, a housing secretary who didn't pay her own stamp duty, which was her own department's policy for her second home.
He's doing
really well. He's lost 2 chiefs of staff. He's lost a director of communications. It's not going very well. He's got rid of 2 cabinet secretaries. What do you make of this Antonia Romeo? She's been sitting alongside the Prime Minister at some cabinet event today for marking the 4th anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. And she's, there's a cabinet meeting, but she's sitting there, and it's just like... the fact that we know her name, I said this on the show yesterday, the fact that it's all been confirmed over the weekend, we shouldn't know her name. She should be this quiet Mandarin. She obviously loves the limelight. Have a photo of me, at an awards ceremony with the Hollywood celebs in New York and the like, when she was our Deputy High Consul in New York. Question marks about the bullying. Again, I've not got so much of an issue over that because that is nearly always someone who's just asking people to do their job. In this day and age, you just imagine the sort of people who go, "Oh, I got bullied at work. I'm sorry." Really, in the civil service, someone just said, "Could you do the thing I asked you to do last week that you still haven't done?" Oh, I'm being bullied. I mean, that's the nonsense we see. But question marks about the expenses, and then the office for ethics breaking into a safe to get the document which has her billing report in to then destroy it. Again, not as we were discussing on this show yesterday. Not waiting till Monday till Bob comes in with the key. It's really looking very questionable.
Turning it into the ultimate sort of Austin Powers movie, weren't they, with the safe-breaking attitude? And they claimed it's because they didn't really know the code and nobody could... And you just sort of think... How does
no one know the code for the safe?
Stop that. That's a pathetic
Who put it in there and did they know the code? I mean, I know the code for my safe when I got on holiday. You know, you've
precisely. I must admit, my husband does. He's in charge of the safe.
He's in charge of the safe.
Yeah. No, he's very good at it.
But I've no doubt at all that the appointment of this Romeo woman, I've got no issue with. I don't know her from Adam. I'm just telling you right now, it's going to end in tears.
I am in agreement with you for the same reasons that you've just raised. And we were looking at Peter Mandelson and all of that history, and the very fact that Antonia's come into a job that we all know her name. It's all over the newspapers. We know what she looks like.
Shouldn't know what she looks like even.
No.
She should just be a faceless Mandelson.
No, exactly. There's a photograph in the paper. We know who that is, and that we shouldn't have that.
No.
They should be in the background, Sir Humphrey and
quietly getting on with their job.
That'd be nice.
Mind-blowing concept. So the event which Keir Starmer is currently chairing, this whole Zoom event, the Coalition of the Willing. This is marking the 4th anniversary of the Russian invasion. We've got a UK sanctions package. We've got more of this, more of this. At the end of the day, though, we really, really do need to be getting Ukraine the help for them to defeat and oust the Russians rather than stick to the stalemate or just, I mean, everyone now just seems to be like, we're just going to hold out until Trump's no longer in the White House and we can get some more help. That seems to be the policy right now because the Europeans ain't up to doing anything. They're having to buy American weapons. So Trump's quite happy to have American weapons being sold to the Europeans, but we're paying for them. But I'm still mind-blown. I mean, I think it's a price worth paying. But we don't need to be using our taxpayers' money in Europe. We should be using Russian money. Without a doubt, it's all dodgy Russian money. Yeah. Because all Russian money in European banks pretty much is, as it was in London banks, and everyone was turning a blind eye for years, as are all the London property purchases as well. It's all dodgy, siphoning money out of the country. And you don't have that sort of money unless you've sidled up to Vladimir Putin and you've paid your little, your percentage to him. That's how it works. It's a massively corrupt country. There's no reason at all why that $300 billion should not be going into the war effort. We shouldn't have to spend a penny. Let's use Putin's own money against him, and we should be doing it on a mass scale, and we should be allowing the Ukrainians to fight back.
Yeah, we absolutely should. And I've said for a long time that if you've got high-end sports cars and super yachts and properties in the capital, why not sell those? I mean, somebody else will buy them. The money should be released. We should be able to hand that over to Zelensky to actually go and deal with the war. Because it's not going anywhere at the moment. And unfortunately, so many young people, including young Russian men, are losing their lives unnecessarily now.
Absolutely. I mean, it is on a grand scale. We'll talk more about that after midday. Let's talk about the Gorton and Denton by-election. This, of course, became the big story when Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, was blocked from becoming the Labour candidate, basically by Keir Starmer and his acolytes on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party. We're going to talk about this. It does mean I'm going to have to read out a whole list of names, so you're going to have to bear with me. We're going to have to read out this names. But it's very interesting. We've got a battle. It's a Labour seat. Had 50% plus at the last election. Andrew Gwynn was forced out over a load of private WhatsApps. I didn't like his WhatsApps, but I don't think people should lose their jobs over private WhatsApps. I think people should be entitled to send private messages, slagging people off and making jokes. I'm sorry, I do. So when all mine come out, remember I said that. But that seat is now very much seen as up for grabs. Lots of people are claiming that it's a battle between Reform on the right and the Greens on the left, and that Labour being squeezed out. But a Labour campaign and the Conservatives nowhere, and other parties pretty much nowhere in this seat. But it's very interesting that Keir Starmer chose to visit the constituency yesterday. And a lot of people are saying he's putting his credibility on the line. Now, as a general rule, a leader of a governing party doesn't visit. Governing parties largely lose by-elections. That's very, very common. Yeah. And perhaps we want political journalists read a lot more into it than they should. It depends who wins, I suppose, is where the challenge to Labour comes from. But they largely, in those scenarios where they expect to lose, they tend not to visit the constituency themselves. Yeah. Like, you know, Kemi Badenoch is not hanging around Gorton and Denton because it's, you know, the Tories on the polling. I don't know how people are going to vote on the day. It's up to them how they vote on the day. The Tories are an also ran, as some other parties. But what do you make of Keir Starmer going there?
I was surprised. I have to admit, because he's either going to look as if he'd made the right decision by not allowing Andy Burnham should Labour win the seat, you know, by not allowing
the view was that he would win the seat.
Yeah, and he can go there and say, see, I knew that this was the right idea for this candidate to be here instead of Andy Burnham. However, the risk is that should Labour lose that seat, then it's going to be the kiss of death, because you had Keir Starmer coming up there and talking to your troops. I mean, I just wouldn't.
But then if they narrowly lose it and he hadn't gone up,
and he hadn't gone
does
there,
Keir Starmer turning up help your campaign or hinder your campaign would be the question, because there'd be a lot of candidates going with an unpopular leader. No, don't turn up. You're going to do more damage.
It'd be interesting to see if he was on the literature, the campaign literature.
It's been a very bitter campaign, particularly between Reform and the Greens. And I think the Greens have been very much in the news in the last 24 hours, which is why I want to talk about it, because they've been accused of having a sectarian campaign. Now, what we've got in Gorton and Denton, we've got sort of pretty much two different parts of the city. So you've got Gorton, which has got a majority of the voters are white working class, and that's where it's thought that the Reform candidate will do best. We've also, you know, pushing on issues of immigration and issues like that, and law and order and things. And in Denton, you've got a student population, very high Green and Labour vote among students, but also you've got a large Muslim population, up to 30%. And there's been a big outcry, including from me, and again, it's not a party political matter. I'd say this about any candidate of any party doing this, putting out a video, and the leaflets as well, entirely in Urdu, because there's a very strong Pakistani Muslim population there. I'm of the view that, I mean, I don't care if it goes out in French. If you put out a campaign video in Swedish, I'm sorry, this is England. In Britain, there are two, they're not official language, but, you know, legally recognised language is Welsh. You know, there are some other dialects spelt in Ireland, spoken, and in Scotland. But the language of this country is English. If you don't speak English well enough to understand an election campaign, I don't think you should have a vote. You certainly shouldn't be a British citizen and able to vote, in my view. And no, this is not a controversial, racist, Islamophobic, bigoted view. If you are French but you don't speak English well enough to understand an election campaign, you shouldn't have a vote. You shouldn't be able to. I really, really have an issue with this. But campaigns which are a campaign in our country in Urdu, I find an extraordinary thing that the great and the good are saying is completely normal.
No, I don't know why they're saying it's completely normal, and I'd be really interested, because I'm quite boring like this. Would like to see their election expenses after this.
I want to see everyone's election expenses.
Exactly, but including this, because I want to know how much this has cost them and why.
Looking at the quality, I'm not allowed to show the video, because then that would be showing a campaign from one particular party. Yeah. I'm seriously not mentioning the names of the candidates, but that has been an issue. But here's the thing. The fact that there is any battle between any candidates where the issues become how will the Muslims vote, and campaigning in the language of many of their families have come from there, or they themselves have come from Pakistan. That strikes me as the evidence that we've all been talking about for the last few weeks, and all that big fuss about Jim Ratcliffe, about how he talked about the country being colonised, and then lots of us coming on the conversation about, you know, the lack of of integration and assimilation. But if anyone in any party is carrying out campaigns where they are not doing it in the language of this country, that tells you that Ratcliffe was right, doesn't it?
I don't know necessarily that he was right.
He didn't like the word, a lot of people didn't like the word colonised.
And I think that's the real problem. The language was incredibly clumsy and not needed. But I just
was it accurate?
I don't think it is, because as you've just said, there are two distinct sort of communities in that area, and I think that we get a little bit carried away by one party perhaps paying more attention. We don't know.
But Labour have done this over the years. We respect party users. Your party are doing this. The independent girls and MPs are doing this.
They should.
But you could also argue that parties on the right, the Tories and the Reform, have been bidding for sort of the white working class vote.
And this is it, when you sort of look at Mondeo Man campaigns of old.
Worcester Woman and
things like that. I think that we bring it down to such a basic level when you're campaigning.
Is that a different thing, though? Is it a different thing to go for, OK, we're going to appeal to working class voters or middle class voters, we're going to appeal to men, or we're going to appeal to women, we're going to appeal to students, we're going to appeal to old people? Is that the same as, hello, we'd like to appeal to people who don't speak this language properly, but for some reason have a vote, and appeal to them on a sectarian religious basis? I think those are different things.
Yeah, they are different things. And when you looked at the 2024 election with the independent MPs who are now sitting in the House of Commons, who were effectively the Gaza party in parts of the north and northwest, I don't think that is right either. I think that we need to look at our campaigning rules. I think we need to look at what politics is there for, and this isn't it. You're not pandering to one group over another. I wouldn't expect to move
really
to
unhealthy.
Istanbul and expect them to produce election literature in English just for me.
And by the way, this is very different from, I walk through an airport in a foreign country that's got a major international airport, and they've got signs in English as well as in the local script. Yes, they do that because English is basically is a lingua franca. It's the language of the world now, and lots of people have English as their second language, and that's a good way of helping people because they don't know, the script of completely different languages. I mean, that's very different. That's about basic communication to people who are travelling through. I think if you live in a country and you're in a country where you actually have a vote, I think you should be able to speak English. Again, I don't want translation services in hospitals or courts paid for by the state either. I'm zero tolerance on this. Bring someone who speaks a language with you. Precisely. Or we can charge you for this service. I don't expect when I go abroad that people will, basically have to provide for me being in a foreign country. That's my problem. And if you are a member of this, you're a British citizen, then you should speak fluent English. And again, I don't think these are controversial views. Anyway, we didn't mention any candidates' names, but by the way, it happens to be one candidate that has done this. However, I don't care whether I'd agreed or disagreed with any of the candidates. Any candidate that did this, I would disapprove of it for any party. I really need to stress that. The Gorton and Denton by-election has a number of candidates, and they are, stay tuned everybody, Nick Buckley from Advance UK, Charlotte Cadden, the Conservative Party, Dan Clark, Libertarian Party, Matt Goodwin, Reform UK, Sir Oinkalot, Sir Oinkalot, Monster Raving Looney Party, Joseph Obicha, Rejoin EU, Sebastian Moore, Social Democratic Party, Jackie Piercy, Liberal Democrats, Hannah Spencer, Green Party, Angelica Stogia, Labour Party, Hugo Wills, Communist League. That by-election is on Thursday. Won't be allowed to talk about it at all on Thursday, but on Friday morning I will be on air from 10 to 1 because we'll see if that election result is worth talking about, whether it's going to have any implications for Keir Starmer, good or bad. Only thing I would say to people who do live in Gorton and Denton, again, I always say this, I just think that voting is so important, and whether it's a local election or a general election or a referendum, whatever it is, you should use your vote. You really should use your vote, because people don't know, politicians don't have to care about people who don't vote. That's your number one. They don't care about people who don't bother voting. So do use your vote, however you choose to use it. Just so that you know, by the way, we've got that debate brought forward, the humble address in the Commons by the Liberal Democrats today, to basically compel ministers to release documents about Andrew Mountbatten's Windsor's appointment as a trade envoy back in 2001. The government says they will not oppose that attempt. Also, by the way, in the last half hour or so, we have a very interesting development in relation to Ofcom. The government has made a significant policy announcement. The major streaming platforms, such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus and others, they are going to be brought under regulation by Ofcom, the Culture Secretary has announced. Many more will also be required to follow the content rules that are in place for broadcasters like us and, the BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4, Channel 5, the regulation change reflects the huge shift in viewing habits in recent years. Going to be brought in via secondary legislation. Basically, the maximum fine per breach. So if you put up harmful or offensive material, there are rules around accessibility, subtitles and things like that. The maximum fine is £250,000 or 5% of qualifying revenue. But basically saying, look, these video on-demand services are being watched like television used to be watched, and therefore they should come under Ofcom's remit. Interesting development, Claire Pearsall.
Very, very interesting. And considering that Ofcom very rarely follow up on all the complaints that are made, and they decide, unless you're certain channels, they decide that you're absolutely innocent. How much of an effect is this going to have? We watch streaming services at home a lot. It's accessible for the times that we want to watch things. They tend to have much better content on them. I don't want that to be watered down because somebody thinks I might be offended by some bad language.
Choose not to be. It's just not sitting. I get to choose it.
Don't like it. Switch it off.
Again, Ofcom regulate us. I'm sorry. Some of the nonsense complaints that I have to spend my time dealing with. Utter tripe. It's honestly, I can assure you that Ofcom is basically run by everyone who worked in a Blair government in their chunky jewellery, and they've all got rainbow lanyards. And I can tell you right now, they all, to a man and a woman, all voted for Remain. I can tell you that, right? I'm sorry. I know I've got no time. I want regulation, but that is not an independent body in my view. Hi, Ofcom, if you're watching. Freedom of speech still allowed. Just 11:28 's time. I'm going to get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up to 11:31 in a few moments, we're going to be talking to the brilliant author Andrew Lowney. I mean, goodness me, that man was pressing with his book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, was he not? First up, though, let's get to some of your calls. Call out on anything we want to talk about. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you getting in touch about Lord Manson's arrest, your reaction to that. But Michael's on the line in Birmingham. Michael, you want to talk about the Valde Cavalcade, the Nottingham killer, not being sectioned because apparently they thought it would be racist to section him.
Well, absolutely, and I've seen similar things, not in the same way, but throughout my career in the public sector. I mean, first of all, I think the Mandelson arrest was planted to obscure this story, by the way. But equally,
I'm sorry, no, that's just a ridiculous conspiracy. They don't plant arrests like that. That's
I don't know, because it's taken away from what goes on. But anyway, I mean, this is the people you just described in Ofcom are basically marinate the public sector. And these kind of decisions, not just a serious one like this mental health, but I've been to meetings where somebody who hasn't done work, hasn't contributed to the meeting, hasn't contributed to the project, has been credited for it and hailed as a superstar by people who you've just described. And bad behaviour, bad performance, incompetence, excused, covered up.
Basically not a meritocracy. Look, that's why we've got a new cabinet secretary. Apparently he's going to do a great job, having worked at the Home Office, good grief. And he's been telling colleagues if they want to improve and do better at work, they need to hire more non-binary people. I mean, A, no one is non-binary. B, she's clearly staring insane.
It's just absolutely bonkers. And I saw the anger in the face of, is it Mr. Blexley? When he was speaking about Nottingham, and I feel exactly the same. I mean, I know you don't agree with me about the Mandelson thing, but I think this is far more dangerous than the Mandelson thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, this is us walking along the street, living our lives, and there are people out there who are killers, who people know are dangerous. They let him out knowing he was dangerous, but for politically correct reasons, same as the Manchester Arena attack, politically correct reasons, the bomber was allowed to continue because people are afraid of being thought of being racist. I mean, this is happening far too often.
It happens far too often, and also, I mean, you can see that I live in Birmingham, and I've been victim of the West Midlands debacle. Not about the Maccabi Tel Aviv, but I don't consider this city safe for me to walk through because I feel as if I could be attacked and then blamed for it, and the people blaming me for it would be believed, and I wouldn't be.
Right,
and
that's very scary.
Well, it's right on the streets here in Brum, Julia.
Yeah.
It's not. It's the way that it is, and I think a lot of it goes into the workplace. If you call this sort of stuff out, you're the one out the door.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, again, I'm so pleased I work in a workplace that is a sane. We're a sane floor in our building. We're a sane floor. I'll put it that way. But yeah, I think a lot of people are living like that. Michael, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Let me go to some of your messages about Lord Manderson's arrest. What's your reaction to that? Steve says, guarantee nothing will happen, same as Andrew. Amanda says, I want to know if the information being passed around includes sex-related compromat. Oh, goodness me. John says Peter Mandelson needs to be investigated to check how much he knew about Epstein's sex crimes. Mark says there's plenty more to come out. What was Mandelson getting in return for the information he was allegedly passing over? I suppose that would be crucial to any allegation of misconduct in public office. And again, both Andrew and Mandelson have denied any wrongdoing in relation to their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I need to say that bit for legal reasons. Pip says, how the mighty have fallen. Let's investigate the Labour Party now. Nikki says, let's send him to the Tower and throw away the key. And he's not a lord, he is a disgrace, says Marla. I hate to tell you, he is still a lord. Rich says he'll be fine, he's not a civilian like us, he knows that the rules and laws won't apply to him. And Walt says, why did Gordon Brown keep all the stuff he knew about Mandelson to himself for so long? Yeah, I think a lot of us are asking that. It's all very, very strange, isn't it? Actually, it's a very interesting development, actually, in terms of what documents we may ever actually get to see. And I'll bring you that in just a couple of moments when we speak to the author of Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York, and that's Andrew Lowney. He's up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:37 is the time. Let's talk to Andrew Lowney now. He's author of Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York, and he's an historian as well. Andrew Lowney, thank you once again for joining us.
Pleasure.
More developments. I mean, the developments just to keep on coming. Obviously, after Andrew's arrest and release on police investigation last week and Mandelson yesterday, interesting developments there. We've got an interesting development in the House of Commons today with the Liberal Democrats tabling this humble address motion to basically require the government, and the government has said they will agree to it, to release all the documents around the decision to appoint Andrew as UK Trade Envoy back in 2001. What do you make of that? What do you think we would find out if we do ever eventually see those documents?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of shredding going on in Whitehall at the moment. I mean, I spent 5 years...
That would be a criminal offence, wouldn't it?
Yes, that hasn't put the government off in the past. So I spent 5 years trying to get access to this sort of information. I mean, I think it's a great development. I mean, I think we've now got the Public Accounts Committee looking at Crown Estate property. I think they should be widening their brief to look at royal finances. And I think, you know, the committees in the House of Commons should be looking at a proper investigation into Andrew's time as a trade envoy, because he was helped and abetted by a whole series of people. I would like a lot of the people who wouldn't talk to me for my book, like the former heads of UKTI, some of the ambassadors in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, to be questioned on oath about what they knew. I do think there's a huge scandal here. It's only going to get bigger. It's not just about financial and sexual misdemeanors. It's, I think, a national security scandal, and we're getting hints of that already.
Well, indeed. But that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people were querying, even at the time of his appointment in 2001, that Prince Andrew had... We already, you know, it wasn't just the randy Andy, the fun stuff in the tabloids about him that was known. That he was very oafish, he was very rude. We've seen lots of stuff over the weekend, stuff that would have been absolutely common knowledge to you and to many in government over the years, that he wasn't an asset when they were going to do trade deals. He was an absolute liability, rude to the people who mattered all over, the young women and the like, and very rude, and was basically taking the mick with his expenses in a way that would get the rest of us sacked from our jobs if we did the same. And now this revelation that he billed, you know, massages by naked women, by all accounts, on his expenses. I mean, things like that. That's none of that is sort of criminal or worrying in terms of national security, but it raises question marks about how did people not raise this at the time and make sure this appointment either never happened or he was got rid of very quickly.
Well, people did raise this. I mean, the two people that are quoted in the BBC article yesterday that I put onto the BBC did try and raise it. But, I mean, they found that their careers were curtailed by raising these problems.
Yeah.
They were told to just, you know, suck it up. The Queen approved, or the Permanent Under-Secretary approved. And there was nothing anyone can do. And now he's kind of lost his cloak of protectiveness.
Yeah.
You know, people are coming out of the woodwork. A lot of people are now talking who wouldn't talk to me, who clearly felt scared to talk to me even a year ago for my book. So, you know, we're getting a sea change.
Why do you think that was? Was it just incredibly old-fashioned deference to the late Queen, to the royal family as an institution? Or was it just, oh, you know, I'm going to look after... if you have that information, you're quite senior, you're going to look after your own career. What's it come down to?
Yeah, it comes down to a culture of secrecy and deference. It comes down to being in an inner circle and not wanting to share that information with anyone else. It comes with the sense of entitlement that people in power have, and it comes from a lack of proper scrutiny and accountability, and being able to behave badly like that. So it's not just Andrew. I think, you know, there's a wider problem here within the broad establishment.
Well, indeed, and it's very interesting that we've got this debate in the Commons, and it's the only time, of course, that MPs are allowed to be critical of a royal, because there's a specific debate, but also because Andrew is no longer formally a royal, having lost his titles. But I understand the MPs will not be allowed to be critical of the King, even though there are some very big question marks about who knew what when, and again there are lots of question marks, I think, about the King's propriety in terms of, you know, Middle Eastern businessmen handing over bags of cash for his charities, and the then Prince of Wales's closest, longest serving, most loyal aide writing a letter, black and white, basically promising the knighthood in return. Now, these things seem to just go away, and there are an awful lot of people, the great and the good, whether it's the police, the government, or in the royal family, whatever, who seem to decide on our behalf that it's not in the public interest to pursue these investigations. But if people do believe in the monarchy, they believe in that institution, that is very much a relationship of trust with the British people, isn't it? It's about you do your bit, you get to live in your palace, you get to do all, but there must be a level of propriety and good conduct that is part of the deal in return, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, the relationship with we are given privileges in return for public duties and setting a good example, and that trust and respect has I'm afraid gone now. You're absolutely right. The king is complicit in this. I mean, he must have known. I know he knew.
When you say he must have known, tell us why. About Andrew. Well,
I mean, the stories about Andrew have been running in the press for 15 years, and at no point does any action seem to be taken. When Sarah was selling access to him in 2010 for £500,000, nothing seems to have happened. When Andrew was found to have taken £1.3 million off Selman Turk, which he couldn't explain in a High Court case, nothing was done.
Is that to pay off debts? Because we've all got people who pay off our debts when we have millions in debts. I mean, surely that's happened to you.
We don't know what they were. Sorry, can you answer? We don't know, but he wouldn't explain what it was.
Yeah.
So, I think, he is complicit, if you let me answer. He's had plenty of information, plenty of people complained. There must have been internal reports. I know police from as late as last December were being reminded of obligations of confidentiality. So, I mean, what they're saying in public and what they're doing in private are very different things. But of course, the principles have to be protected and the wagons are circling.
Yeah.
But I think there are wider questions, and I do hope that there will be proper parliamentary scrutiny in future of all the royals, because they only operate on our behalf, as you say.
But it is interesting, isn't it, this idea that somehow that would be wrong, whereas of course that would be to the benefit of royals, if they were more, if it was more open and there was scrutiny and there could be more trust. There's certainly been lots of question marks about Andrew's finances over the years, selling his home for well above the market value. To someone from Kazakhstan, I think it was. Sure, you can correct me. This £10 million, ski chalet in Switzerland. Where did that come from? There are lots of question marks, and you'd think certainly, I have siblings. If my siblings suddenly turned up with this stuff, I'd be wondering where they got it from.
Well, if they have nothing to fear, they have nothing to hide. They have nothing to fear. I think the problem, and that they are secretive because they do have secrets that they don't want people to know about. I mean, we need, for example, royal wills unsealed. We need them taken out of the the exemptions taken out of the Freedom of Information Act. We need a royal register. But I think the most important thing is we do need some parliamentary investigations and some proper parliamentary scrutiny. They now need to, in effect, report to Parliament, not to self-police themselves.
Yeah, indeed. We've shown that they've been unable to do that. What do you make of the moves? We've had the Australians now, the New Zealanders, New Zealand government saying that they would back a call, and we're looking at this being many years down the line, realistically, after, if there is any police action, an act of Parliament that would take Andrew out of the line of succession, currently 8th in the line of succession after William and his children, then Harry and his children. Is that really necessary, and is that a rather more complicated affair than many people think, especially with Caribbean nations who have been looking at leaving, not the Commonwealth, but leaving, having the king as the head of state and perhaps asking for something in return?
It's complete gesture politics. Yeah. It's completely pointless. I mean, it serves no purpose. I mean, he's not going to become king. He's not going to be a Chancellor of State. The royal family wouldn't want a parliamentary debate about that in any case. I think the focus has to be on accountability from the royal family and justice served for the victims against Andrew. Absolutely.
Now, there's been lots of concern that about this misconduct in public office allegation that against Mandelson and against Andrew, that actually it's notoriously difficult to prove, and certainly both men have denied any wrongdoing. But a lot of people are wondering how long we're going to wait for the information that has been sought for to be in the public domain. And after if there is any trial and any court proceedings. But we're now learning that emails between Number 10 and Lord Mandelson discussing the peer's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to be released in March, but some documents could be held back until any police investigation or possible criminal trial concludes, and that could go beyond 2029, by which time, of course, in August 2029, there must be another general election. Do you think realistically in the next few years weeks, months, years, we will see the documents that people are asking to see? Or do you think a lot of this will remain hidden for a very long time?
No, we have records, for example, of the royal family going back to the 19th century, which are still closed. So this has just been kicked into the long grass. I mean, a very easy way to deal with this problem is to say it's become sub judice, can't be discussed, and it's part of an investigation. We're doing our best, but it will take time, and hope by then everyone will have forgotten. So I'm afraid classic establishment operations.
Do you think that these men will ever, and again, they've denied any wrongdoing, they've not been charged with the crime, I need to stress that. Do you think these, both Mandelson, who backed by all accounts as business secretary, backed Andrew for the role of trade envoy, both of them good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, best pals, do you think either men will ever stand trial?
No, I don't think. Well, I don't know about Mandelson. I suspect Andrew will do a midnight flit to the Middle East. That would solve a lot of problems for the royal family. The last thing they want is all this stuff aired in public, particularly if other members of the royal family are involved. If he says, look, I'm the patsy here, you guys all said it was okay, then I think they're in real trouble. So they're going to try and shut this story down. And the easiest way to do that is to get a friend in the Middle East to give him bed and breakfast.
Very interesting. Andrew Lownie, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Author of entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York. Claire Pistol, listening to all of that.
Absolutely fascinating, isn't it? And
he knows his stuff, does Andrew Lownie.
He's
been writing about this for a long time.
And quite interesting that people are now coming forward to pass information to him, whereas previously they wouldn't. I think people are now feeling a little bit more able to do so, and that should be encouraged.
But it's just worrying. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I tend to poo-poo it, people talk about it, but there's no doubt at all the circling of the wagons, the urge of the establishment to, keep everything quiet. It's not in any of our interests. And again, if Andrew were charged with a crime, I've got no doubt at all that one of the defences will be, well, I'm going to be calling you as a witness, I'm going to be claiming this and that.
Imagine,
I mean, that's the sort of thing that anyone in that scenario would do if he were charged with a crime.
Yeah, but interestingly, I think a lot of people think that he's going to disappear off over to the Middle East. I'm sure there's a friendly dictator that'll take him in. That's the company he seems to like. Never
met another dodgy billionaire that he doesn't like. So there we are. Yeah. Love to hear your thoughts on what Andrew Lownie had to say. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. A lot of people saying, we're going to get these documents, going to get this document. We're just not going to see a lot of this stuff for many, many, many years. What we need Isabel Oakeshott to offer to do memoirs for one or both of these men and to release the WhatsApps. That's what we need. That's the only reason we know anything about what happened during lockdown. We need Isabel Oakeshott. We need you. 11:50 is the time. Up next, going to talk about why over half of councils in England are still, or Britain, are failing to comply with what is crystal clear advice from the law from the Supreme Court last year on single-sex spaces. We're going to be talking to For Women Scotland's Susan Smith about that up next. This is Talk.
Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food, scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 11:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk about that Supreme Court ruling last April that made it really, really clear the thing that we already knew, and that the law was already and had already been the law, which is that if you're going to decide what is a man or a woman, single-sex spaces and the like, it's based on biological sex. You knew that, and I knew that, and everyone until 10 years ago definitely knew that, until a whole load of lunatic people decided they didn't know it, including our Prime Minister. But even since that ruling, more than half of local authorities in this country are still failing to comply with the crystal clear Supreme Court ruling that biological sex, almost a year after that landmark judgment. Some 159 of the 317 councils in England are still, they say, waiting for guidance, despite the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, who has not been an ally on this, saying that the ruling was crystal clear. Well, let's talk about this with Susan Smith. She's the director of For Women Scotland, the ones who took the government to court in Scotland to basically prove that, well, you know, women are women and men are men, and it's a biological thing. Good morning to you, Susan.
Morning.
I think, again, and I've spoken to so many of the ladies at Sex Matters and others, and people who've been supporting your brilliant, brave campaigning, and everyone was saying, oh, you know, it's all over, we've won. And I remember saying at the time, oh, I wouldn't be so sure of it. And it's extraordinary how many organisations, private companies included, charities, but particularly councils, paid for by you and me in our taxes, are basically going, ooh, just not going to enforce the law. Tell us what it is they're supposed to do, and tell us what they're doing instead.
Well, they're supposed to follow, as you said, the Supreme Court ruling, which was very clear that sex is biological, and that if you provide services and spaces for women, they should be provided for on the basis of sex.
So what sort of thing would that be in terms of those facilities?
So if you run a leisure centre, councils obviously run leisure centres, the changing rooms in the leisure centres, if they're the women's changing rooms, they're for the women, the men's are for the men's. Public toilets in the library, all these sorts of things. Or if you're running a women-only event, say, at the library, that's just for women. And it's really, really straightforward. Oh, the other thing, of course, the big thing is schools, and trying to get this out of schools and ensuring that councils send a very clear message. And in fact, in Edinburgh, despite the fact that many of our councillors are robustly opposed to enforcing the law, they were told in no uncertain terms by the legal team at the council that they had to ensure that school toilets were single sex, because otherwise they will get sued. And this, of course, is what has happened in the NHS. We've just found out that the Darlington case costs the NHS £600,000.
No, it didn't. It cost taxpayers £600,000. That's the bit that bothers me. They are fighting against the law to enforce gobbledygook nonsense that they know categorically, because the highest court in the land has told them it's against the law, and they are using our money to do it. I think everyone involved in those cases should be sacked on the spot for wasting public money.
And there will be more. You know, there will be so many more, because we've already supported parents who took their council in Scotland to court over the schools policy. And there's going to be more and more and more. And as you say, this money is public money, and we are not awash with cash.
No. I think the NHS has certainly got better things to spend. And most local councils saying, oh, we've got no money, but they're still fighting it. A lot of them are saying, we're waiting for guidance. And we did have the Equalities and Human Rights Commission issue guidance, I think it was last September. And then Equalities Minister and Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson just sort of sat on it. And we know why she sat on it, because she's going to upset people on the sort of the woke side, because they're going to know, you can't possibly stop a man in a dress from going into a woman's toilet or changing room. Well, yeah, you can, because it's illegal. I don't understand why they they can get away with this. I mean, is there not a legal duty of public bodies to obey the law? And is anyone... I've always thought the same with private companies as well. You need people who are personally responsible and liable. So if you instigate that policy or you don't change the policy, you will lose your job. You will pay a fine yourself. You may go to prison or whatever it is, rather than, oh, we'll just fight it. If we lose it, we'll carry on as normal.
Well, we've been thinking this, actually. We've been thinking that we're getting to the point now where we will probably have to take action against individuals for misconduct in public office, very similar to what's happened to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, who we were discussing earlier. Not for the same thing, of course, not on the same serious level of seriousness, but nevertheless, if you have a position of responsibility as a politician, it is your duty to abide by the law. You cannot go out there and tell other people at the risk of vast expense for the public that you are going to disobey the law. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
You know, the Supreme Court ruling wasn't difficult.
It was black and white. You didn't need to be a lawyer to read it. It was written in plain English. What was it? 8 pages. It was just, you only needed, frankly, about 8 words, didn't you, to tell us what everyone knew until about 10 years ago, what everyone knew and what 99% of the public know now. And they pretend to not know it. But again, you say, like, no, it's not as serious as, like, the allegations the likes of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is facing. Actually, do you know what? I think, you know, a little girl going into a school toilet and having a boy there, or a nurse, you know, working in a hospital, having to get down to her bra and pants and having a man in a wig and a bra watching her do it. I think that's pretty darn serious.
It is serious. And, you know, I come back to Bridget Phillipson. I would say there's a real failure there. She's got the guidance. She says it's crystal clear. Well, lay it.
Yeah.
And, you know, if she doesn't have the guts or the intelligence to do what she is obliged to do, she should resign and let somebody who can do the job. If she wants to be in politics, she needs to show leadership.
Absolutely.
And she is failing. Absolutely.
Susan, I mean, I think in a battle between you for Women's Scotland and Bridget Phillipson, I think we all know we've got to put our money on, because you do not walk away from a fight, and we bloody love you for it. Susan Smith, Director for Women's Scotland. Claire Pearsall.
Oh, we need more people like Susan, don't we? We do need more Susans. Bridget Phillipson needs to make these enforcements.
Do you know what Bridget Phillipson needs to do? She needs to man up.
She does.
She needs to man up and get the men out of women's only spaces. I just find it extraordinary how many people think they can just not obey the law. I just find it, especially if you're a government minister or you're running a local council, it's just utterly bizarre. Anyway, we're going to leave that. We're going to take the news, and we're going to be talking about what more help should we be giving to Ukraine. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. Lots of you getting in touch about Lord Mandelson, that arrest for allegedly passing secret government information to Jeffrey Epstein, your reaction to that, and your reaction also, I mean, a lot of you getting in touch about the Nottingham killer. 3 lives lost, 3 other lives changed irrevocably by, I mean, thankfully surviving Valdo Calacane. But even on the first day of that inquiry into the killer, just extraordinary revelations that basically he wasn't basically kept behind bars, kept somewhere safe to protect himself and indeed others, because, well, you know, the statistics showed that more young black men were kept behind bars, and so they didn't keep him behind bars because he was black. I mean, you couldn't even make up a story that terrifyingly dangerous, but that is what's happened. Lots more going on as well, lots more developments, of course, on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and whether or not we're actually ever going to get the documents in relation to that, and indeed on Peter Mandelson. He was released after his arrest yesterday, but now we're looking at, well, it may be many years even before we get to see internal documents about, well, who knew what when. Indeed, long after the next general election, which has to be held by mid-2029. So we're going to see what happens there. But I do want you to get in touch about any of the big topics we are talking about. And 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with on X at talkTV, and calls are charged at a national rate, and text costs one standard network rate message. We are also going to be talking a little bit more about the Green Party's latest Muslim vote campaign video, which is entirely in Urdu for the large Pakistani heritage population in the Gorton and Denton by-election. So do stay tuned for that. And also, our UK unemployment set to rise above the worst months of the pandemic within months, up to 5.5%. Despite the fact we spoke to a Labour peer and former government minister from many years back under Tony Blair, who insisted that our economy was doing the best of, well, it's ever done. I mean, just simply isn't, guys. Anyway, Claire Pearson is joining me. She's former Conservative government advisor. Thank you once again for joining us. We talked a lot about affairs in Britain, all these different criminal probes, what on earth's going on, by-elections, and goodness knows what else. Let's also turn our attention now to Ukraine. Yeah. It's a big issue. You know, if you actually think, you know, about our cost of living, that impact on energy prices, they've never come down completely from where they were. A lot of it comes down to the Ukraine war. An awful lot of the focus of the current Prime Minister and previous Prime Ministers, going back to Boris Johnson and indeed of many in Europe, has been focused on the Ukraine war, on the threat from Russia, battles between Europe and America, big battles on that. On the 4th anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, where do we stand now? Do you see any hopes that we are ever going to see peace in Ukraine?
I think you always have to hope there's going to be peace in Ukraine. I think the Ukrainian people deserve that we don't give up and just walk away, and I think that would be the worst thing. How it comes about is sort of remains to be seen, and I'm not convinced there's an easy way forward, but I don't believe that we need to allow Russia and Putin to just take land that isn't theirs just because they want it, because why should they? Why should Ukraine?
Trump thought he could take Greenland, but there we are.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He did. I was in Iceland when that happened, and the Icelandics were finding that very, very funny.
Well, he also referred to Iceland a few times, so they might be worried. Right, well, let's turn our attention and ask a question of this to my next guest, who's been a regular guest on the station and on my show since the invasion of Ukraine, and he is a retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, and he's the former commander of the US Army in Europe. A very good afternoon to you, Ben.
Julia, thank you for having me back.
Thank you so much for joining us. There's no doubt at all Ukraine kind of like, a lot of what's going on the ground gone off the front pages, especially when we had, October the 7th in Israel and lots of other developments, whether it's Donald Trump and Greenland and goodness knows what. It goes off the agenda, but it's still there for an awful lot of our European leaders, and it's still impacting the European economy. And obviously, much more importantly, it is massively impacting the Ukrainian people. We've seen massive loss of life, and also of the Russian troops, most of them conscripts, losing their lives too. what do you think, just first of all, what do you think the chances are that we're going to be, well, the 4th anniversary today of that invasion, that we are going to be marking the 5th, the 6th, the 7th anniversary?
So it is the fourth anniversary of the large-scale invasion, but of course 12 years ago was the initial invasion.
Yeah.
So the reason I always bring that up is to counter this narrative that somehow it's inevitable that Russia's going to win, because after 12 years, with every advantage, Russia still only controls about 21% of Ukraine. So that when did it actually start matters. My guess is that what President Zelensky just said is that this is kind of the beginning of the end. Is actually sounds plausible when you start thinking about the stalemate that's on the ground. Russia cannot defeat Ukraine, but Ukraine cannot push them out unless there's some significant change from the outside. Ukraine has discovered that they can really hammer Russia's ability to export oil and gas. So that means that on the other side, Russia cannot sustain this indefinitely. So I think it's a year from now, if you'll give me the privilege to come back on your program, the war will probably look a lot like it does now. 2 years from now, I don't think so.
That's very interesting. And in terms of the help that's been given, there's no doubt there's huge sums from Americans and from Europe. I mean, Donald Trump has often said overplayed the American contribution versus the European contribution. Took a long time for quite a lot of European countries like Germany to get their act together. I remember you and I discussing this very early on, and there's no doubt at all. I've got a lot of issues with the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, but on Ukraine, he was absolutely a leader among the West. However, we're now in a situation where Europe is having to pay for, out of our own money, for weapons bought, made and purchased from America to ship them to Ukraine. Ukraine is in dire economic and in every other state. And yet we've still got this, $300 billion worth of Russian assets sitting in banks in Europe. And that money is not being used. I mean, what is stopping Europe saying, like, we're just going to take this money? We know this money's dodgy. It's frozen assets. That's the penalty for Russia invading. You haven't got that money unless you're an acolyte of Vladimir Putin. Why are we not taking that money and spending that on defending Ukraine and defeating Putin on Ukrainian territory?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I like the way you framed it at the end, because that should be the objective for all of us, to defeat Russia in Ukraine. This is not about going into Russia. This is about defeating Russia inside Ukraine. And I'm embarrassed to say that the U.S. ambassador to Belgium was bragging the last couple of days that he was putting pressure on the Belgians to veto or stop the EU from taking or using these frozen Russian assets. And that's part of our problem, is that the current U.S. administration is not interested in helping Ukraine, only in getting credit for bringing the war to an end and getting a deal and then getting to business. And so because of that, I think my European friends and allies are finally realizing they can't hope that President Trump comes around and finally does it. And so this is good. This is going to be Europe's problem to solve, because this is about the defense of Europe. This is not about gift to Ukraine. This is about European security.
And an awful lot of people, we've discussed this on the show many times, and I'll get people calling up, and I'll get a load of messages on social media saying you're a warmonger. They're no doubt shouting that at the radio right now about you and me having this conversation. But again, and I know I've done this a million times, but I really think it's important. You're someone, you've fought in war. You're a military man. You know what war is like. We're looking at the true cost of this war. We talk a lot about families, having to leave Ukraine. The families, the families who are living without electricity and heat large parts of the winter because of the bombing of the civilian infrastructure by Putin, very deliberately. A war crime, of course, but also the real cost we're looking at, in terms of, Zelensky claims that Ukrainian troop death is at 55,000. Many others estimate it's at 140,000, 360 to 400,000 casualties, some 15,000 Ukrainian civilians. I mean, thankfully, not a huge number of Ukrainian civilians, but too many and deliberately targeted by Putin. But also this loss of Russian life sent as cannon fodder, like it was the First World War by Putin. Some 325,000 Russian soldiers killed to date. and more than double that, almost 3 times that, wounded or missing. And we're looking at sort of sometimes in some battles, looking at 1,000 men a day dying. And these are conscripts. These are, this is a terrible loss of life. But Putin doesn't care about any of that. Why should people sitting at home and listening to this right now in Britain, why should they care about this battle in a country which, never been to, probably would struggle to put on a map? Why is it my problem, and why is my Prime Minister holding a meeting about that when we've got problems at home, and why is our money being spent on that when we've got problems that need our money here? What's your answer to that, Ben?
Yeah, you know what, and that's a very fair question. I hear that from people in the States also, like, why is this our problem? Well, the fact is, this war started when Russia attacked Ukraine, using force for the first time in European history since the end of the Second World War, invading another European country, and that put millions of refugees on the road into the rest of Europe. So that was not just a coincidence or an accident. That was an intended outcome from the Russian side, just like when they were helping the Assad regime in Syria. Yeah. Weaponization of refugees, which put enormous pressure on European governments and societies. So that is one of the major problems if Russia is successful, or as this war continues, is the millions of Ukrainian refugees that will continue to come into the rest of Europe, number one. Number two, of course, the disruption of energy and food supplies that began with Russia's attack of Ukraine. That affects food prices in UK, in the United States. So that's a direct impact on us. And then finally,
Ukraine, the bed basket of Europe. I mean, that's exactly what it's called.
Well, so that has all been disrupted. That affects people there in UK. And then finally, the Russians have made it very clear that it's not just about Ukraine. And so if they are successful in Ukraine, they will press hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers into the Red Army. And then within another year or two, they're going to be knocking on the door of Estonia, where the UK has troops, or in Lithuania, where Germany has troops, or Latvia, where Canada has troops. And they will continue what they're doing. So that's that part. And then, of course, what Russia's doing in gray zone operations, that is threatening the sovereignty of UK, destruction of undersea cables, a violation of airspace. All of these things are part of Russia's war. We're in a war now because we didn't stop them back when they first began to threaten. And the best way to prevent a war is to show that you are prepared for it. That's not warmongering.
Yeah, but willing and able, and that's the crucial thing. And certainly without the Americans contributing more than everyone else put together to NATO military, Europe hadn't been able to fight. Do you think this has been a perhaps, unwelcome but necessary wake-up call to Europe? You've been based in Europe for a long time, I think in Germany a lot. You've been working with NATO, even as a retired general. You're very much, you know all the people making the decisions, Spencer. Well, I love to have you on. I know you're in the know about the thinking. But that actually they've had their heads in the sand for a very long time. And it's about time we paid for our own defence rather than expecting taxpayers in Arizona to do it.
Well, certainly, I'll give credit to President Trump for pushing this to the forefront. All of his predecessors have complained about it also, but he probably has been more forceful and vocal about it, perhaps at the cost of damaging trust and relationships with allies that we desperately need. But nonetheless, it absolutely is a fact that European countries, including UK, have a responsibility to ensure the protection of their strategic interests and of their populations. And you have the resources to do it. These are tough political choices about how to do it, and doing it with allies, of course, is always going to be better than trying to do it alone.
And we are far richer than Vladimir Putin. What do you make? Every single time we get another announcement, and this is Coalition of the Willing announcement from Keir Starmer, a meeting, and there's more sanctions here, more sanctions there. I'm still amazed there are any sanctions that we haven't already instigated. But Putin's stranglehold on the Russian economy and the Russian state has not been undermined. In fact, he's probably strengthened by the fact it's now a full-on wartime economy, which again, if the war in Ukraine ended, that's going to be an issue, because how does he then have an economy that isn't wartime unless, you know, things go horribly wrong? What do you make of the chances that anybody, Donald Trump clearly being the only person really, can bring Vladimir Putin to heel? And in terms of the negotiations we've seen so far for a ceasefire, where Putin just, I mean, it's not even just he's relented on any of his demands for territory that he hasn't even conquered himself, but he makes more and more demands, and yet Zelensky is basically being asked to sort of basically surrender, and to surrender territory and people to the invading force. Why does Donald Trump think that is in any way a building block towards peace?
Yeah, this is a mystery to me. I think that the administration's approach to the negotiations has been doomed from the beginning because they never cared or understood about the origin of the war. Yeah. They've only echoed Kremlin talking points. And even Secretary Rubio, from whom I expected more in the beginning of the administration, he started off by saying Ukraine's going to have to give up some land. Yeah. I mean, that was the opening part of their, art of the deal. And I think the fact is that the administration, including Mr. Witkoff, our unprofessional negotiator, is more interested in getting into business deals with the Russians than anything else. And then, of course, the president, his legacy, I think because he believes the Russian side versus his own intelligence, he thinks, put all the pressure on Zelensky, this will be over, and I get credit for stopping the war.
Why does he believe the Russian side? I mean, Putin's playing him. He makes him, frankly, technical term, he makes him look like a schmuck a lot of time on the world stage, and Putin's smirking away in the background. Is he compromised? There's a lot of talk that there's this compromat they've got on him. There were loads of Russian banks giving Donald Trump money in the days when he was a New York property developer and couldn't get loans from anyone else. Is he compromised? Is that what it is, or is he just impressed by Mr. Strongman Putin?
I don't think those two are exclusive of each other. I think he really does want to be kind of in him, Xi, and Putin, kind of the big three guys. I think this is a part of it. He clearly does not like President Zelensky. He does not give a dang about Ukraine, and he thinks this is Europe's problem to solve anyway. So I think that this is going to keep going because, as you said earlier, President Putin does not care about how many casualties they have.
No. That's the big concern.
He has no incentive to stop. 1 million Russian veterans unhappy returning home after losing the war with nothing to which they can return. That's not a prospect that Putin wants to deal with.
No, indeed. Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, retired general, former commander of the US Army in Europe. So appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearson, I mean, God, a bit depressed about that, although I do like use of the word dang on my show. We should use dang more, don't give a dang. I mean, again, a lot of people are just utterly perplexed because there's no doubt at all that with Europe and United States combined, and our military capability and finances, we could be helping the Ukrainians to push Russians back. The Russians view this as basically, they view that they'll say anything to justify the Russians, Putin. And the propaganda he puts out. I'm of the view that we should be giving them everything that they can, weaponry, etc., so that the Ukrainians can defeat Russia. And the message needs to be loud and clear: do not
mess with us.
Yeah, no FAFO here, mate, because you are going to UFA, you are going to FO. As simple as that. But he has found out that actually we'll just do a bit of sanctioning here, a bit of sanctions there, and then we won't buy your oil, but we let you sell it to India, and then we'll buy it from India, and all this nonsense. So we've done everything in a half-hearted way, and everyone goes, Putin needs to get the message. Well, he is getting the message. He's getting the message that you are not willing and able to do what is necessary to stop him.
Yeah, he's getting the message, and he's looking at it saying, I don't care, I'm going to continue. What are you going to do to me? And the answer is nothing.
Yep.
And he knows that. I think it's quite interesting when listening to Ben Hodges just then that he was not a great fan of Donald Trump, but he did say that the only reason that Europe and the UK looking to increase their defence spending is because of this. And I do think that is a triumph of Trump.
Well, everyone laughed at Trump in 2018 when he said he was president first time round. And why, again, why should Americans fund NATO people?
Absolutely.
My view is generally, if you ain't keeping up your subs, it's like if you're a member of a golf club, you don't pay your subs, you don't get a play.
Exactly, you're out.
I mean, that's how it works.
It's quite simple. So I think that is a really good thing. What we do with that money and where we put our resources is another conversation.
Things a lot of European leaders. I mean, we've seen this certainly with Boris Johnson. I think especially with Keir Starmer, they really love doing a little bit of the old foreign sortie. They love being the big I am on the world stage, and it feels good. And I'm sure they want to do the right thing. But again, there's a lot of posturing and all the coalition of the willing. Well, what willing to do what? Because if you're not willing to spend a good whack of your GDP on military, and you're not willing to get rid of the nonsense like net zero so you can actually afford to do that, you're not willing, are you? You're just talking a good game. And this is the trouble. We've had posturing by Western politicians so much. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is steel, cold hard cash and steel. Yes. You need to be able to, your boots on the ground. Now, Zelensky and Ukraine, they are not saying they need our boots on the ground. We don't need to send our men to go and share in the bloodshed in Ukraine. They said, we will do that. We just need the help to do it. And I despair at us not giving them at each stage what they needed. We waited and waited and waited and waited. If back in early 2022 we had given all the aid we could have given, this could have been long over, and many hundreds of thousands of lives could have been saved, and Putin would have been back in his box. But we didn't.
And we don't send over the right levels of things of ammunition. The conversations that people were having around the Storm Shadow ballistic missiles, ridiculous. There were endless conversations.
Absolutely.
You think somebody somewhere just make a decision.
And we always end up giving these things to them in the end anyway. Well, meanwhile, they're developing the drone technology, because we'll be 10 years behind on that. Yeah, I genuinely despair. And again, people say you're a warmonger. No, Putin's the warmonger. It's really, really, really simple. And it's just it needs to be stopped. And again, no, he's not going to roll the tanks in to Western Europe. But you can read some history books, people. Read some history books. There's a reason why there's been so many wars on mainland Europe between Russia and Germany on opposite sides. There's a reason why, okay? And I just think people just need a wake-up call. And so many of our politicians, they've not served in the military. They don't understand it. They don't get it. They don't do long-term thinking. They don't do strategic thinking. And they're just not equipped. They're not equipped for the tough times that we've got ahead. But there we are. 12:24 is the time. I'm going to take a few of your calls and your messages as well. 0344 499 1000. Want you to have your say on all the topics we're talking about. We'll get to those up next. This is Talk.
Michel Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and you are on the phone. So 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have you say. Fergus got in touch. He's in London, and you want to talk about Mandelson, his arrest and bail. What do you want to say, Fergus?
Well, it's so funny. The whole thing is World War II.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a thing, the mosquito bombers, little teeny little things, used to go and drop bits of aluminium foil over Germany, which were called chaff.
Yeah.
And so the Germans thought lots of bombers were coming. They weren't.
Brilliant.
It was chaff. It's little bits of aluminium foil.
And they'd waste a lot of machinery, artillery trying to tackle it.
Yeah, exactly. And when I'm looking now at I've been watching Jeremy. I'm hooked on your station, I have to say.
Well, we're very delighted to have you, Fergus.
Oh, I love your channel. I really do. Anyway, the thing
Someone's got to.
Yeah. No, we all do. A lot of my friends are now hooked on Talk.
Good, thank you.
We dropped chaff all over Germany during World War II. Right. So right now, we've got Starmer in trouble. We've got Mandy Pandy and Andy Pandy in trouble. But what happens to Tony Pony? Nothing.
Tony Blair, I'm guessing you mean.
That's what's so funny.
But there's no allegations against Tony Blair that I'm aware of.
Are there? Are there?
Don't think there are.
I'm sure he's perfect. And Kiri Weary, poor Weary Kiri, and poor little Starmy Wild. Oh my God! There's a whole list of them, and they're all lefty-wefties. I'm sorry.
Don't know where this is going, but you're saying, look, a lot of this is chaff. So all these investigations, you're saying, are you saying, look, there's a cover-up of something else going on?
Yeah, there's a cover-up for all of them, and Mandy is obviously very, very clever. Kiri Weary is.
He's an also ran. No, he's not.
He's an also ran.
Again, this is my thing. This is why I don't go for these conspiracy theories, because I've met a lot of these people. I don't think they are that clever. And again, if Mandelson was so clever, it wouldn't keep getting caught losing jobs. I mean, regardless of any criminal investigation, he's already lost 3 jobs because of his cleverness. It just makes you wonder. But I mean, look, there's no doubt at all. Andrew Lowney is a brilliant author, and was on a bit earlier. And it's there's definitely an establishment cover-up. There has been an establishment cover-up. There will continue to be an establishment cover-up. It's what they do. That's how they're in the establishment, and we're not. But do you think we'll ever get to the bottom of who knew what when?
Well, I have to tell you, I've got a friend who works very, very high up in the Treasury, so I can't actually say any more about that.
Rachel? Is it Rachel from accounts?
No.
Rachel, is it someone who understands
customer service?
Oh, right.
Rachel from customer service. She wasn't in accounts at all. No, God, it's dreadful. No, actually, a civil servant who said, "Oh my God," because I used to think the civil service was brilliant until I got to know someone who works very high up in the Treasury.
Yeah.
And do you remember Yes Minister?
Yes.
And Yes Prime Minister?
Yes.
It was all true.
Oh, no, I know it. No, absolutely. They used to film the episodes in front of civil servants because they would get all the jokes. No, I'm with you all the way. Fergus, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. That was a fun call. Yes. Kiri Weary, whatever. I don't know. Are there any more names for Kiri Weary? Let's get to some of your texts and tweets before we get to another call. Peter says about Lord Mandelson being arrested and obviously on bail. If this isn't treason... No, Peter says he should be on trial for treason, not just misconduct in public office. He's denied any wrongdoing. I need to say that. Mark says if this isn't treason, I don't know what is, but the media isn't using that word. Well, I've used it. I might... Andrew and Mandelson, if you're a member of the government or you're serving as an envoy, I think you're acting against the interests of the government. I don't understand why there isn't treason. Christina, again, if for police purposes. Christina says, when one goes, they all go. I want to watch how many people will grass others up. Yeah, that's interesting. People now talking to the author, Andrew Lowney. Bill says, drop the Lord title for a start. Scumbag is more appropriate. Jamie says, the state matters more than children, which is why he's been arrested for corruption and not sex crimes. A lot of people making that point, actually. That is a concern. But again, I think it's because black and white evidence of, if it is true, of a of an email sent when you're, either a trade envoy or you're a business secretary is much easier than someone 20 years after the fact saying that they believe they were.
I think you have to be very careful.
That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go to one more call. Roger is in Daventry. Roger, you want to talk about the Supreme Court ruling, making it really clear about women's only spaces based on biological sex, and about half the councils in England still ignoring that. What do you want to say?
Well, it was just the I don't know why we're pandering to such a small percentage of the population. When it comes to trans spaces and conveniences, why don't they use the disabled toilet?
You mean trans people? Yeah, that's my view, and it can be disabled and anyone else who wants to use it. I completely agree with you. The whole world turned upside down for the benefit of a few people who quite wrongly believe they're born in the wrong body.
I know, it could be disabled and unable.
Yeah, it's just anyone wants to use the toilet. Frankly, I'm not. If you're uncomfortable using a communal area, or you're not allowed to use the communal area which you think you'd be comfortable in, you can use a single sex, a sole facility for one person. Again, never thought it was complicated. And as you point out, I mean, the disabled facilities, they are legally required to be available, aren't they? So
yes, exactly. And there's never a queue in the disabled, is there?
Well, ain't that the truth? Roger, again, you solved this problem, which apparently the government and all these councils are completely incapable of doing. Why? Because they are completely and utterly up their woke backsides. But there we are. They could just get those rainbow lanyards out. They could actually work it out. Thank you, Roger, for that call. It's rather obvious that, Claire, isn't it?
I think it probably
Solve the problem.
And we all get so protective over the disabled toilets, and I do appreciate that disabled people need to have a space that is made for them, but there often isn't a queue. It isn't used for a long time. I don't see the difference between one other person going.
I've got to be honest with you, if there's a big queue for the ladies in an airport or somewhere and no one is at the disabled queue, I will use the disabled. Is there a law against it? I mean, if there was a disabled person, I wouldn't dream of it. And I wasn't going to settle in, but I mean, I don't know. Am I not allowed to do that? Am I going to get in trouble? I don't know. But there we are. Anyway, 12:33 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to chief political writer at Spiked Online. That is Brendan O'Neill, about what on earth is going on with Lord Mandelson, but also going to be talking more about that upcoming by-election in Manchester on Thursday. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:35 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearce will still here. We'll get her thoughts on what my next guest has to say, and that is Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked Online. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia.
Very well. Lots to talk about. Lots to get through. Let's talk first of all about Mandelson and that arrest and questioning by the police and released on bail in the early hours of the morning. It's followed, of course, Andrew's arrest and similar circumstances. Same potential charge, but in different circumstances from last Thursday. What do you make of this and these claims from many that, we're seeing a circling of the wagons by the establishment and everyone's talking a good game, whether it's the King, whether it's the Prime Minister, whether it's, any other politicians saying, yes, we absolutely need all the information. It's all going to be out there about who knew what when, who made that appointment, who didn't stop the appointment when there was issues. Do you think that actually there is going to be an establishment cover-up, or do you think we are going to get to the bottom of it all?
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it seems pretty clear that Lord Mandelson has questions to answer. I think everyone can agree with that. He is, of course, innocent until proven guilty, like everyone else. But he does seem to have engaged in some very problematic behaviour. He maintained a friendship with a very dodgy person, even after that person was convicted of serious crimes. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of question marks. What it really raises is just, this idea that Keir Starmer's party and the New Labour project more broadly would be this sweet, squeaky clean operation, that it would end the era of Tory sleaze, that it would bring, decency back to politics. I mean, what a joke that was, because it now seems that this whole establishment, not just Mandelson, but other people around him, it seems that they were up to their neck in dodgy behaviour. And we really need to get to the truth of this matter.
Well, yeah, but do you think that we will, though? Because, again, even in Parliament, they're having a debate today, and for once, MPs are allowed to criticise a member of the royal family, but apparently they're not allowed to criticise, for instance, King Charles, or ask questions about him, because that wouldn't be allowed. I mean, we're in a situation where our democratically elected members of Parliament aren't allowed to ask questions of the head of state.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like you, Julia, I'm a Republican. I think we should be allowed to interrogate.
We're being booed by my audience right now. You know that.
I know. I get booed about this all the time. I think we should be able to interrogate anyone in the royal family, right up to the head of state. These people are not beyond the law. But, my unpopular position is that I fear that Andrew and Mandelson are kind of being set up as foils for bigger scandals in our society. So one question that I just can't shake out of my mind is, why is misconduct in public office such a big issue right now with these two, when it wasn't when officials, police officers and politicians looked the other way as thousands of working class girls in this country were raped by gangs of mostly Muslim men? Was that misconduct in public office? You're bloody right it was, but where is the discussion about that? Where are those cases? So we're still not looking at serious problems within this country, and that worries me.
And it's just basically, look over here. Now, I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I want to take you to task. You're a gentleman, you're an American journalist and investigator you spoke to in one of your latest podcasts, and you were discussing very much about the Andrew allegations regarding Epstein, and just sort of, talking about how there's a lot of hysteria about this case. Do you think there's hysteria about someone being close friends with them? Okay, we don't know. We haven't seen any charges in relation to anything related to whether or not Prince Andrew was involved in any of these sex crimes of Epstein. There's certainly been some lurid newspaper columns about things and allegations made. Virginia Giuffre, a payment to her made, but to a woman apparently he'd never met, etc., etc. We've all perhaps got our own personal opinion on these things, but certainly no charges, certainly as yet. But his close friendship with somebody who was trafficking girls, grooming girls, and it wasn't, there's a lot of views of this, that what was happening with the girls and young women in Epstein's, world were, they were being jetted around the world, so it was all okay. And as I keep saying, that's just geography. They're just not above a kebab shop in Rotherham, but they're still being raped. Lots of the women who've given testimony are very clear about it. Was very, they were groomed from a very young age, just like the girls in Rotherham and Rochdale. They were targeted because they were vulnerable. They were victims of abuse, neglectful parents, alcoholic, drug addict parents, etc., etc. That they were also subject to horrific violence, sadomasochistic violence in these sex assaults, and a lot of people, people say it's all been a bit hysterical and look the other way. They're ignoring the nature of those crimes.
You know, my view is that we need to separate two things. We need to separate what we know, which is that Jeffrey Epstein was a very bad person who committed serious crimes against young women and underage girls. Let's be honest, let's call them by what they were. We know that he was convicted of that, and there's a long track record of that. We also know that Mandelson and Andrew are suspected of misconduct in public office, although we're not sure what happened there. But then the other thing, the separate thing, is the way it's all been fed into this huge global conspiracy, I would say. This idea that there are gangs of secret pedos, you know, people call Andrew the pedo prince, who was part of a satanic sex ring. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. And I think the more we tangle these two things together, the truth of what we think we know and this myth making, the more we will just obscure the reality of what happened, which is bad enough as it is.
That's a very fair point.
Everything else.
That's a very, very fair point. We'll have to see how this goes. But again, I have a funny feeling it's going to be a very long time before we know any full facts. And again, even the stuff that if there is any charges brought, any trial will take a very, very long time to come to fruition. Let's talk about what's been going on in the world of politics more directly here in the here and now, and some announcements we've had from Reform UK, being very prolific with their announcements. They've appointed their new, they call them the shadow, Home Secretary, shadow Chancellor, of course, their front bench spokesmen and women. But Zia Youssef, Reform UK's would-be Home Secretary in the event they were elected, they've basically been talking about, how they want to follow, what America has done with ICE agents. They're, of course, unarmed, deporting up to 300,000 people every single year who are here either arriving illegally or staying illegally, talking about banning all face coverings, including the burqa and face masks in public. And Zia Youssef also saying that the party would withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights, something they've talked about many times before, and saying that the ECHR puts the rights of British citizens beneath those of criminals. What do you make of all those policies and that statement?
I think they're good policies. I don't know how we've arrived in a situation where it is considered racist and possibly even fascistic to kick people out of the country.
Who aren't supposed to be here. I'm utterly bewildered by this.
It's so bewildering. The more I think about it, the more bewildered I become, because for as long as nation states have existed, there has been an understanding that you may be allowed to visit the nation state. You may even be allowed to work there for a period of time, but you might have to go home. That is perfectly normal. Right now, as we're speaking, there are countries around the world who are preparing to deport thousands and thousands of people. And I mean, countries like Australia, countries like America, countries like France, normal civilized countries kick people out if they overstay their welcome. So it's right and proper that we do that. And the idea that this is a racist policy is just for the birds. It's complete nonsense. I was unsure for a period of time on whether we should ban the burqa and ban religious face coverings in public. But I think I'm coming around to that argument, because I just think we have such a problem of antisocial behavior in our country, such a problem of failure of integration, where people are living parallel lives in different cultural universes to everyone else, that I think something drastic has to be done. And I think requiring that people show their faces in the democratic public realm is probably a good idea right now.
Well, I'd say I've long been in favour of a ban on the burqa, and certainly the face masks now as well. By the way, the face masks do not stop you catching a cold on a bus or a tube. You look like absolute lunatics, people. I couldn't agree more. And again, I'm fascinated by how many young men, apparently young, slim, healthy-looking men, apparently are terribly concerned about viruses on public transport. They have to cover their faces, often even on my local high street.
Yeah, exactly.
It's laughable.
It's part of that whole antisocial behaviour. I genuinely think that we should expect better standards of behavior in the public realm. I feel like I'm becoming an old nag, because when I hear people playing their music out loud or wearing masks or bumping into old ladies or refusing to give their seats to people who need them, I just feel like grabbing them by the scruff of the neck. I think we should be allowed to.
This is my thing. I think we need to get back to the old school. Seriously, if you think you're bad, you should be with me on public transport. See whether. Look, let's also talk. You talked about, like the burqa and these issues, and always something racist or not. Where are you on this by-election we've got on Thursday? Now, we need to be very careful to talk about by-election, because we're going to have to read out all the names of all the candidates at the end of this conversation. But the Gorton and Denton by-election in Manchester, people are seeing, and as they often do with by-elections, it's a big bellwether event. Keir Starmer chose to turn up to campaign there yesterday. A lot of people are saying that's because maybe Labour will actually retain a seat that they previously won with over 50% of the vote. But until that point, people were talking about how this was now going to be a fight between the voters from Labour who'd gone over to Reform, from the Tories and Labour, and those who'd gone to the Greens, and that was being a fight between those two parties. Now, big controversy, lots of attacks on the Reform candidate, but lots of attacks also on the Green candidate. I mean, barely any attention being paid to the Tories, the Labour and Lib Dems and other candidates, but certainly I was very critical yesterday of the Green campaign video and also Green campaign leaflets that have gone out in Urdu, because there's something like a 30% Pakistani Muslim population, and Urdu is a language that many of those people will speak. I'm of the view that there is no campaigning at all in any other language in this country of England where people should speak English. And certainly if you're a voter who doesn't understand English, I don't know how you've got the vote, would be my question. But where do you stand on this? Is this sectarian politics, or is this something that, frankly, has always been done?
I completely agree. It should be against the law, I think, to campaign in any other language than English. That's just the bottom line of politics right now. I'm very worried about the Green Party, I have to be honest. I can't understand how this party went from being a gathering of kind of doddering, eco-friendly middle-class people to being an instrument of reactionary Islamism. That seems to be what it has become. And the way it's trying to stir up the Muslim vote in Gorton and Denton, including by saying, let's punish Labour for Gaza. I'm sorry, but if you're trying to whip up the Muslim vote and that hatred for Israel in order to get another seat in the Commons, that's a real problem. And then at the same time, we have the Green Party flirting with the idea of passing a new policy that calls Zionism a form of racism. I'm sorry, but if they do that, if they adopt that policy in a vote next month, they will become an institutionally anti-Semitic party, because Zionism means one thing and one thing only, which is the right of the Jewish people to their own homeland. This would be the first mainstream party since Oswald Mosley's Black Shirts that institutionalized its disregard for Jewish rights. This is how serious this is right now. And I think we've got to have a genuine discussion about how the left, the modern left, has cozied up so comfortably with Muslim voters and with Islamist ideals. And that's a real problem right now.
But it is absolutely fascinating. These things are playing out, and often, again, there's lots of this seat in Gorton and Denton in white working class voters. And regardless of whether they're Muslim or white working class voters or students, actually, times are pretty hard. There's a cost of living crisis. People are concerned. People are worried about the economy. We're going to be talking about the economy with my next guest. And yet, issues about Gaza are on the agenda. And a lot of people will just wonder, when did this happen to our politics?
Yeah, why are we talking about a faraway conflict instead of the problems, serious problems in a place like Gorton and Denton? But the divide there is so fascinating, because one part of the community is made up of lots of Muslim communities and also kind of diverse young student communities. And then the other side is made up of the white working classes. And the divide is just extraordinary. It seems that the white working class side is preferring reform and the other side might be leaning towards green, possibly. That's the new divide in 21st century Britain. It's the divide between the kind of virtue signalling middle classes who are interested in the trans question and the Gaza issue, and they're obsessing over all these issues that most people don't have any interest in at all, and white working class voters and other working class voters from other communities who want to talk about the economy and improving health and improving community life. Any party that appeals to those common sense views, I think, could do well in any constituency.
Interesting to talk to you, Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer at Spiked Online. Claire Pearce are listening to that. Now, you're a former Conservative government advisor. No one seems to be mentioning the Tories in this by-election.
And it's a shame, because we have a really good candidate, but it's an area traditionally
I'm sure
where we're
all the
not...
candidates are really good. I'd like to stress that now.
Sorry. It's not an area that we traditionally are very strong, so it's
you wouldn't
unsurprising.
Expect. Yeah, it's why Kemi Badenoch hasn't gone up campaigning there. It's not really. But Keir Starmer turning up. I'm going to be on air on Friday morning, so to see what the result of that is. Going to read all the candidates out, so you've got a choice of all those candidates. Gorton and Denton. If you live there, you can vote. Nick Buckley, Advance UK. Charlotte Cadden, Conservative Party. Dan Clark, Libertarian Party. Matt Goodwin, Reform UK. Sir Oinkalot, Monster Raving Loony Party. Joseph Omicha, Rejoin EU. Sebastian Moore, Social Democratic Party. Jackie Piercy, Liberal Democrats. Hannah Spencer, Green Party. Angeliki Stogia, apologies for that, Labour Party. Hugo Wills, Communist League. 12:50 is the time. Up next, going to talk about the small matter of that, that economy thing. How's it going? We had a Labour peer on earlier telling us it's all very well, but I'm not entirely sure it is. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Michel Mandarin. He's in his 70s. When he was 14 years old, he was forcibly removed from that island, dumped on the quayside. He had to live from food scraps out of bins. If it hadn't been for the Catholic Church, hundreds of them would probably have died. And you know what really gets me, Jeremy? This government is full of human rights lawyers. It's surrounded on the outside, too, by human rights lawyers. They bang on about this all the time. Well, what about the human rights of black Chagosians?
I genuinely...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:53 is the time. Just to let you know, it's fascinating that Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, renowned for always telling the truth, they've accused the UK and France of planning to provide Kyiv with nuclear weapons as part of their efforts for the Ukraine war and fighting that little Russian excursion into that country. The UK government has issued a statement saying there is no truth in these accusations. I mean, what a load of utter baloney, Claire Pearsall.
But it's typical, isn't it? This is
Russians are having a laugh.
But this is what the Russians do, don't they? They put something out there and it's going to get travelled around
and then it'll be a
very,
conspiracy theory and then loads and loads of people on social media will be going, oh, how do you know it's not true?
Awful. Exactly.
No, there you go. You all fall for it, but there we are. Right, let's turn to whether we can fall for whether the economy is in good nick or not. We're constantly told that by government ministers. Indeed, a Labour peer a little bit earlier on the show. Is it in good nick? Justin Urquhart-Stewart is an economist. He's also chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform and joins us now. Afternoon, sorry to you, Justin.
Afternoon.
Appreciate you joining us. Unemployment is going to surge to 5.5% within months. We're told by a Wall Street bank, JP Morgan. And they say the jobless rate is climbing above the worst months of the lockdown, for goodness sake.
Well, look what your guest said earlier, that Labour peer. He was talking about the economy's never seemed so good. This is complete and utter rubbish.
Just literally never happened.
Perhaps it's just astonishing. There are one or two positive straws in the wind, and which are encouraging. But you can't one-off figures like that. You can't rely on. Also, generally you'll find they're being, in fact, not generally, quite a lot of them being revised downwards as more data comes in.
Yeah.
But good news is, yes, we are still growing. But let's be very careful here. Is it real growth? You're seeing the first green shoots. Be careful. It could be advanced mould.
Well, indeed. And we had some tax receipts were pretty good, weren't they? I think at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. But again, that may be down to people just sort of paying off their money before they leave the country. We know many wealthy people are leaving the country right now.
This is a frustration, isn't it? Because what you want to do is create more wealth, and that allows you to have more taxation. However, the other way around, more taxation does not create wealth.
No.
There's nothing political about it. That's just straightforward mathematics.
Well, people argue against it. We've got many political parties and politicians who say, no, that's not true. And I mean, it's like, but it is, and it's been true for all time, and it's been true for all countries that have tried it. In terms of unemployment, though, again, what is the cause of that? Is this just a worldwide downturn? Is it Brexit, as some would say? Is it down to the national insurance rise, the rise in minimum wage? Of course, again, people always forget it's not just the minimum wage, and it goes all the way up the pay scale because people have this thing called differentials.
Well, what you could see is, there are all sorts of things you can point to and say, well, actually, the employment is showing signs of trending. But what you are seeing is actually at far lower levels of employment, primarily because you mentioned there those extra tax on the national insurance for employers, and also I love the idea of they're increasing the minimum wage. Actually, the government doesn't pay any of the minimum wage. It's companies that do that. So just merely putting that on. And actually what you're doing...
Well, the public sector do. It's been a massive extra hit for the NHS and care homes and everyone else.
And what happens to those people, therefore, at the wrong end of the pay scale, the weakest end, they end up actually paying more tax because of the actual freezing of the tax levels.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, it's a sort of hidden form of taxation.
Yeah.
Because
it's sort of given with one hand and taken away with the other. But also, if the cost of living continues to go up, that money's eaten up anyway.
Absolutely. So now time for actually some real innovation here. There are one or two issues which really could be, the people argue against it. Remember, a third of our debt, actually it's just under a third, it's about 25%, 26% of our government gilts is owned by the government. So we actually owed the money to ourselves. Logically, you could actually cross those two off on either side of the balance sheet, and finally, you've got more ability to actually go and actually borrow more if you wanted to be able to do so. Now, people will say that's impossible. They said the same thing about quantitative easing, where countries print money to actually get more things going. Impossible? Well, we did it once. We said we can't do it again because it's too expensive.
Has it worked out well for us doing it? Yes, we did it at the banking crisis. We did it during lockdown. It doesn't work out very well, but I suppose we get away with it because everyone else did it at the same time.
Well, yeah, but you can't keep on doing that. You just devalue everything. What you can do, though, again, is focus on those areas where we know we are successful. It's these tech areas, those tech hubs around the country. Now, if you want to see some creative taxation, actually create incentives to be investing in those areas and these particular areas like technology. Now, this has not been government investing in it at all, but actually you can have things which you can put in place which cost the government nothing.
Yeah, that said, if you want to be taxing a load of new tech development, it's all going to be in AI. We ain't going to be able to afford to do AI in this country because our energy prices are too high. But there we are. Left hand, right hand of the government not thinking and knowing what they're doing. Justin Urquhart Stewart, always so good to talk to you. Short but sweet, but always get loads covered there. Claire Bissell, I mean, we had that former Minister, Labour peer, Lord Falk, saying, everyone's saying that the economy's in great nick. It's not.
Yeah, suddenly we've never had it so good. I'll get my unicorn when I leave the studio, and
we give them away for free, absolutely, to everybody,
and sparkles all the way home. I just think they don't know what they're talking about. They don't live in the real world.
They really don't. Talking of sparkles, he's here now. Ian Collins.
Hello, Treacle.
All right, darling.
Sparkles. I like that.
Can I just say, I'd love a unicorn.
Yeah,
wouldn't it be great?